Mr. Mayor, one of the things that the council has talked about over the year is making some improvements in this building. And so I would like to, if we're unable to get that accomplished this year, that money go into next year and we make a concentrated effort to get this room up to snuff.
You mean get rid of the squirrel hole?
Oh my gosh.
Ceiling, I mean,
It's not a squirrel hole. Lori Yeager, not a squirrel hole.
Okay.
I think it's important. This is our city hall. It's what we rent to people, and it should look much better.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
should we then, if we haven't spent this 80,000 for the well, should we look into that, or?
Well, I think it'd
In
be
the well?
important to have the chief here, since at the meeting last week, he was saying that at this time, it wasn't his priority because he has water and he's trying to get some other things done. I don't know when that fits his schedule because nobody's talked to him about it. So is he still planning on a well this year, and does that cover it? I don't know. That's
What-
what we guesstimated last year based on some estimates that we had.
So we leave it in here for a while and see when he wants to use it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, so let me ask if, typically, if you have something in a fund and it doesn't get used, does it roll over?
You can roll it over, yep.
So,
Typically, you put it in here and you want to accomplish that goal. So typically, if you don't get it done in the year that you planned on it, you just roll it over to the next year, typically.
'Cause
Unless something has changed drastically, like the building burned down or something, so you don't need to do the improvement for the city hall, you know what I mean? So typically, if it's in here, you would roll it over to the next year, because it's a goal that you had in mind, and maybe just didn't get it accomplished for whatever reason.
because of the uncertainty with construction materials and construction labor and everything else this year, I would still like to do something this year, but if it can't, and knowing we can roll it over and keep it in that fund, makes sense. The chief can speak to the well where it fits in his calendar, and if he's done any research as to whether this is still a good number. Again, I don't know what the shortages have done to, I know in most construction areas, the cost have gone way up. Does that impact wells because they're fighting for labor? I don't know.
Right.
We had an estimate that was slightly lower than this, but they had to do test wells and we had to pay for every test well. It was about $6,300 a test well. So until they found water, you were paying for test wells.
Mr.
There was
Mayor?
one that was significantly higher than this, and then they changed it and came in lower, and they weren't certain whether they were going to pay for test wells. But that was, last fall. I don't know what the chief's done on it since he's taken over. So. Councilmember Blake?
We already have a well, right, here? We must have, because we have water.
We have a well for this building.
Yeah.
There's a well here that services this building, the fire station, and the pavilion.
So we do have water somewhere, or we wouldn't have a
But
well, right?
these wells are 500 gallons per minute.
High
So
capacity.
These are high capacity. These are like you'd see out irrigating fields.
Oh, I see, okay.
They have to be able to fill the truck in a matter of a minute or two.
Okay, so we're.
And so
it's
a
much
typical
different
home well is going to be, I don't know, what do you guys got? I think Mork doesn't do anything higher than 200 gallons per minute. So typical well is going to be
Not serviceable.
less than 100.
Okay, I
So
see.
it's got to be a commercial well.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
And they have to get state approval for where they hit the aquifers.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
after we talked to Commander Schmidt and he had put in a request for that tanker truck and all the assorted pieces that go with it, I mean, that sounds like his priority right now, and I would say we make sure that's first and foremost so we can get the redundancy with the trucks. I would say that would be our priority. And I think Schmidt already made the well a secondary priority, and when the truck is here and all the gear associated with it, then he'll give him time to focus on the well.
I do think, what he was saying on Tuesday was he needs to get the truck going because it's a 12 to 18 month build. So I don't think he's gonna wait till the truck gets here for that. And he said some of the ancillary equipment, it sounded like if we, however we pay for the truck, the financing or the bonding, if we go ahead and do that, he could get some of the ancillary equipment in if they can use it on the existing truck. But I don't think we'll see that truck for a year to a year and a half, he said. So I think that, I don't know, I know they drill wells year round. I don't know if it's later this year. He still thinks the well can go in. When we had talked last year, 3 things he was looking at was he needs to know geology, he knows geography, he needs to know placement in the city so that where he's got water already, he wants it where it's closer to where he doesn't have water. The other thing was there are some farmers in the area that were interested in a public-private partnership, and he was investigating, and I don't know where he's on that, but he was investigating what the legalities of that. If you were to share cost with somebody in the private sector, what are the legalities? But I know that some of the wells here are 750 gallons per minute or better if they're in a prime location. So I say we best leave it there and we can roll it over if they don't get to
Okay.
it this year.
We'll do that. We can do that. So then, going out into 23, 24, 25, 26, I don't know if you guys have anything in mind, you'll have funds available. So maybe just think about it, put it on your plate, say, well, what do we need to have done, what buildings need to be taken care of, or things like that, so just,
So then just to say right now, the interest is projected for 2021, 3565, you still think
yeah,
that's
that's
a good
not
number?
happening. No, that ain't happening. I don't know.
Okay, so what is your best guess at this point?
Oh, I don't know. Less than 0.5% of 178, so whatever that is, I don't know. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Greenberg.
$900.
Lori, in the park, buildings, park siding improvements, what page is this?
maybe $1,000.
Park capital, that $50,000, what is that?
So you jumped down to the Park Capital Improvement Fund?
Yeah,
Okay, and that 50,000 was for Memorial Park improvements that Lori had put in place for 2021. And she can address that too, if she would like.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I had hoped to work on the Memorial Park down here. All of the trees are overgrown. There's roots coming out of the ground. They all need to be removed. It should be cleaned up. It's a memorial park, and I was hoping to have a nice memorial park in place. I don't anticipate it would cost the full $50,000. I don't know how much it would cost. And I don't know where we came up with that number, but I mean, it was a good
It was
number
a
to put in. and
placeholder,
A
yes.
placeholder, yeah. But it could cost up to $30,000 maybe to get a landscaper in to remove everything and get new plants planted and a memorial statue or something over there.
And this Park Capital, these funds here are derived from the dedication fees that you get from developments. And so they are designated to be used for parks alone. You may need to build another park based on how much development you're having. So that has to be investigated. So I don't know where we're at with that, but that's, if this is for playground equipment, it's for, park development, trails, things like that. And that's what this fund is for.
sure. Well, one of the things we had talked about prior was a pickleball court, improving the park, Twin Lakes Park. We had a tour last year. We looked at the buildings that were in disrepair. The the Frisbee golf area need a little bit of touch up. So I was curious, is that, what, would that come out of that 50,000 too? And if so, maybe I ought to earmark another 50 grand for pickleball plus all the other things I mentioned, and we bumped that up to something more. I don't know what a pickleball court would cost. I'm gonna guess, a 8-foot-high fence, chain link fence around that whole perimeter.
Typically, they don't fence them.
So maybe
because
just
it's a
a
wiffle
net
ball.
across?
Yep.
Typically, I've seen them where they fence the back side, so you don't have to chase your ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't fence all the sides.
So it
But
can
they
be
set the-
just a
the
short.
The back sides and then the net, yeah.
Okay, well, that
And then
doesn't
a
sound
court.
too expensive.
No, no.
There was a neighboring city just did this, and they had allocated $130,000, but they were doing a lot of them.
Is this Edina?
Anoka just put a bin down there with a hockey rink off of
Yeah, I can-
7th and
Yeah. I
Highway
can check-
10.
check and
Look
see what
over
they-
there where the hockey used to be, in that
Yeah.
little bitty
I have
park.
it.
They just put in, I think, 4 of them.
Okay, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
so off the cuff, what would you guess it would cost?
I would guess if we took our existing basketball court and turned that into 2 of them, we'd be,
Sorry. It's me. I didn't,
we apologize for those listening at home,
sorry.
if you have your headphones on. I would say, if the city were to provide any equipment, but basically it would be the net and the striping. I don't know, what the blacktop looks like. I haven't been down there lately to see how smooth it is, but maybe a coating of blacktop and then striping and a net.
And back fence, so it doesn't roll forever?
I think that's a good idea.
I'm gonna get, if we're gonna cover it with blacktop, that's gonna be $5,000 right there.
So are we proposing?
Well, I'm
eliminating-
trying to look into the future and
Are you
say,
trying
well,
to
we had
eliminate-
talked about pet projects,
You trying to
which I have
eliminate the-
some.
Are you trying to eliminate the basketball
Add
court?
this number. That's a good point. Forget the back fence.
I'm just saying, is it gonna be another court, or are we taking over the basketball court?
I think it's taken over the basketball court, but one of the things I was thinking about is to
No.
retain the basketballs.
Can't do
And if
that.
we put no back fence in it, they could still play basketball. Now, I played down there and I've never played full court. We only just play 2-on-3 or 21 or whatever, and I don't know if I've ever seen someone play full court. So I think both could be done if that's where you're going.
I don't think you have to take the hoops down to do it. You're probably the only one I know of that's actually used it in recent years, but I think when we invested in the hoops, you could just have to reserve it for one or the other, reserve it for hoops or reserve it for pickleball. What I'm seeing in other cities is pickleball, when you put in the courts, they're occupied most of the time.
What, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake?
what's the possibility of just doing 2 new pickleball courts if they're so popular and leave the basketball court as a basketball court?
Good.
So that, I mean, just because you haven't seen anybody play and I haven't, doesn't mean nobody plays on it. Maybe they do, and maybe nobody even knows it's there, But if these pickleball courts are so popular, maybe we should have a couple of them. So people could start, don't they do tournaments and all this? Not tournaments,
Oh, yeah.
but leagues and stuff?
Yep.
I mean, my friends that are in it it's big time there.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Greenberg?
I say we put it in with the basketball court, see if the interest is there. So there's plenty of talk about interest, but the proof is in the pudding.
Okay.
So if we build it and there's a long line of people trying to play pickleball, it'll be an indication to us that there's interest. Then we can build court number 2.
Yeah, there's a good idea.
It's kind of what we did with the disc golf, see what the interest was and see if we wanted to expand it after we saw interest, so that's a good idea.
Yeah.
In regards to that, so I go out there and play ultimate frisbee every Wednesday, and almost every Wednesday I see people playing frisbee golf. I don't see anyone in the foosball thing.
Never. It's never been.
I get repeated requests from the community that we should move it closer to the beach because it get better use. But there's certain things that just don't get used and certain things that do. So anyways, that being said, I think it would be nice to buff up the ultimate frisbee course. I mean,
The disc golf?
the disc golf course, the one that there's fallen in slight disrepair, and to bring it back up to snuff. One of the ideas I had was to expand it, but that would be, I think, another discussion at another time. So, taking in consideration pickleball and fixing up of disc golf, I'm gonna guess 10 grand for one, 5 grand for the other. I would like to see 15 grand added for these two projects.
So Joel, when you talk about the disc golf and improving it, you know, typically in other cities, disc golf has a concrete tee. I mean, they have more formal, we just have a tee marker and then the movable nets. Are you talking about improving the tee boxes and the nets? Are you talking about widening the course, or when you're talking improvement, what are you thinking?
Well, I think it's, to some degree, it's fallen in disrepair, so to fix all the signage, anything that's worn out, be replaced. I wasn't gonna go as far as throwing in the cement in there. I don't think it warrants that much, use. But for certain widening of the lanes, I mean, if you are not spot on, your Frisbee's going into the blackberries, and they hurt.
Poison ivy.
And the poison ivy. Between the blackberries and the poison ivy, yeah. So the widening out of the lanes, checking the holes themselves and if they need any repair, things like that. So, not going too crazy, but I think 5 grand might do it, maybe 10, maybe I'm way under, maybe I should throw in 20 grand in here. Because I don't, if we plan on, if we were to pave the top of that basketball court, I think that could be, you know, that would be the lion's share of the pickleball, and I think a net right now and some lines would encourage people, give it a try, and we could see if people show up. So I don't know if we need to go to the full bang, but we could, so 15 to 20 grand, I think, for those two projects.
What did you guys
So,
find with
Mr.
with the buildings? Are the buildings needing repairs too?
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I was going to ask, so Andy Schrader did a report for us a couple years back. It's packed in a box because I haven't opened up my whole office yet. Has staff looked at what Andy has recommended as far as, I mean, that report's probably got to be 4 years old. And so some of the things that he was recommending in the near future are there. And some of it's roofing, painting, minor maintenance, but I think that should be included here. Because we can have pickleball and all of that, but if our buildings are falling apart.
That's right.
It'll look like this in no time.
So to your point, Jason, last year we went building by building, and we did find when we went down to the pavilions in Twin Lake Park, that at some point, it appears that we got somebody else's used buildings, and I believe they came from the county.
Yeah.
And so when they replaced them here, they didn't line up the nail holes in the ceiling with the old nail holes. And so while you're in the pavilion, if it is raining, they do tend to leak. And so we had talked last year, one of the things was going up and actually sealing those with a silicone or some type of sealant. The other thing is we did get those used from the county. There was question as to as a number of cities our size try and make arrangements with the county when they do replace things that are still useful, but they're upgrading. We could take a look at that. It's kind of like the fire department's doing with the DNR. As they replace equipment, they can get good used equipment. We just have to make sure when they're put back up, they actually use the same fastener holes.
Are they tin ceilings?
Yep. So you can imagine a tin ceiling with it. And if they've nailed in the valleys, it's... Now, we haven't had any rain this year to be down there and see how bad it is, but we did notice that last year that some of the tables were wet when we walked through. So it was obvious that there was...
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
I
Rainville.
believe another item that was, that we found deficient were the barbecue grills. Some of those were in bad shape. So that would take staff to look at how many are there, how many need to be replaced, the cost on those. The other thing was, in the concession stand here, and I met with a contractor today, the doors at the concession stand at Now Then Pavilion, are the least thing from user-friendly. as far as being able to open and close them and have access to the building inside. So I'm getting a bid, what it would cost to put a metal roll-up in that opening.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake?
did we replace the refrigerator and those things we were talking about in there?
Mr. Mayor to Councilmember Blake, the tables are on order. What had been in stock all of the time is no longer in stock, so I had to online order them. So I sent Lori a copy of the order. They hopefully should be here at mid-August. I looked at refrigerators last week. I'm gonna go Thursday and look at another location. But the refrigerator will be in place by then.
So are those the basic things you need to make that usable, friendly?
At this point, yes. The
Okay,
tables-
and again, get a new rolling door.
Yep. And I meant to go down, I believe it's a rolling door at Twin Lakes.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would match that. And then I took some pictures of things that I'm gonna ask Lori to have staff take out of there. There's been a microwave in there that's been there since
Yeah.
I've been using the park.
I know,
And
I saw
an
that
old
too.
refrigerator, about 10 rolls of toilet paper that have been sitting, I
Where you
mean,
know where
it's
that's
just.
from?
Huh?
That's from Heritage Festival. That's where they stuck all the extras when they brought out the porta potties.
Oh, was it? Okay, but I mean,
And nobody knows it's there.
they're worthless. I mean, they're old and so.
Well, you don't know, if we have another shortage coming up,
That's
it might be gold.
We could sell them.
It's someone's stack.
You can use it. But I would like to ask that staff go back and look at that report from Andy. It covered all of our buildings, this building, the maintenance center, I believe the fire station, and the 2 park pavilions and City Hall. And incorporate what he had suggested as far as improvements that will be needed or upkeep that will be needed. And like I say, I know that report is at least 4 years old, so we're coming up on that.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Alders?
what's the condition of like the lake shore where people swim? Is it like getting encroached with vegetation that we need to look at as well? We talked about widening the lanes on the,
The last time I was down there, it did look like it was coming in. We used to put up buoys out there to keep the boats out of the swim beach. I think part of the frustration with the floating ropes was cut up when people would drive their boats over them. So staff got tired of doing it, but it does make sense, especially without lifeguards, to have a marked beach.
Yeah.
And I do think that, you know, as close as the boat launch is to the beach, we just need to make sure the vegetation isn't encroaching. It's one of the last swimmable lakes in the area. I mean, it's a nice lake. You've obviously had your family gatherings down there. Can you speak to the weed encroachment and the?
Do we bump into the DNR if we start doing that? Or can we make our own judgment on that?
I think it's worth asking. I don't know that we're not eliminating wetlands. But if, you know, we want to be legal, so we check first. But I think since we've got a designated swimming beach, we would be within reasonable request to say we want to maintain it so it doesn't grow over.
Yeah, well, that'd be great, and I'd love to widen the beach. When
well, I'm
it's-
just, I don't even know if you can widen, but it's like the patch that's there,
Yes,
is it
so
swimmable?
small.
Because I don't know that it is.
It gets packed, when it's a hot day, it's packed.
It's packed and it's like,
It'd be fun to widen it, but
So how's the sand these days?
funny you should ask, Mr. Mayor. So we went to go play volleyball, and some new sand had been brought into the volleyball pit, and we had a great net, so awesome. But the sand that was brought in was more of a small pebble on one side versus sand, and we're all going, ooh, ow, on the one side. And I was thinking, could we take the pebbles and like remove them and put them sand, or could we put the pebbles everywhere and then cover it with sand? I just didn't want to bring it up.
Well, that could be a way of handicapping if you have one team that's better than the other.
So I played in my Crocs to keep my feet from getting bit. So it wasn't sand, it was small rocks.
Typically, we bring in the white sand.
Well, that's what they
It's-
should have
it's
done.
much more of a powdery sand than a pebble than a gravel.
I don't know if it wasn't available or, but otherwise, for years and years, it's been that really fine sand. Do you know anything about that, Lori?
I don't know, and just call anytime and I can check into it. So I haven't heard anything on the sand versus pebbles over there, but I'll check tomorrow.
The debate, sand versus pebbles. The sand down by the beach is, you know, is fine. Someone egged the sign down there, I think, a week ago or something like that. Our sign is pretty straightforward, you know, don't bring bottles, don't bring pets, ignore the sign. Everyone ignores it and they bring whatever. One time I was there and someone brought horses to the beach, right in the water, up to their bellies. And I'm like, if the horses go number 1 or number 2, that's kind of gonna negate the whole swimming experience.
Yeah, that's what, we used to, guys didn't know I was on the council, and now then they were telling me that's where they like to take their horses in the boat launch, because it cools them down and then they can relieve themselves. And I said,
Oh,
Oh, brother.
so you do know we have a swimming beach right there, right? You know, I said, we? I said, yeah, on the city council.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'd like to just summarize what I'm hearing, and I'm going to incorporate this in the budget process. So I'm going to be rolling over the well and building improvements, and now the chief is here, he can maybe speak to the well. We're going to add a pickleball court to the park fund, fix up the disc golf in the park fund, look at barbecue grills, look at the concession stand for a door, and that'll come out of the capital fund. The park building improvements would come out of the capital fund, so out of the building fund. And then any swim beach improvements would come out of the park fund, and volleyball court sand, I don't know how much that is. If it's a capital item, it'll come out of the park, but if it's not, then it'll come out of the general fund and part of maintenance, so.
And then just to evaluate the pavilions, to take a look at the
That-
pavilions themselves and any
Yeah,
leaky roofs.
that's what I meant by park buildings, park pavilion buildings, I guess,
Mhm.
okay, that's what I'll call it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Alders.
I think for the recycling center, if we continue to have someone employed there, we're gonna need to come up with a plan for winter. I don't know that we're gonna get someone to stand there when it's 20 below all day long.
We do have heat. In the back part of it, it's insulated and heated. Because we do have when the county comes out, that's part of it, is that where the baler is. And if you notice, there's insulation on the wall there, and
So
there's a big heater. Yeah,
Just
I
in the
don't know how
very
effective
back
it is.
room though, so if customers, residents are coming in, they would have to go out into the open area where it's not heated.
To deal with them.
Yeah,
Yeah, and one of the things that we talked about is if we were going to staff that, is it'd be nice to have an office out front. You know, a small area that could be heated, they could be indoors and go in and out and dress properly, they can maintain, do some maintenance as they're helping people, like. that would be another-
Go ahead.
Councilmember Alders, did you, you had a term for that, you mentioned a building outside.
Yeah, so like, just look at like when a small version when you go to Menards, right? To go into the lumberyard portion of it.
Oh, yeah.
So we have that at work, it's just a one-person, 4-season shelter for checking people in and out of our yard as drivers come in and drop off stuff. So it's air conditioned and heated, and it's about the size of a big phone booth.
Good idea.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rainbow.
Yeah, that, like we also call them the shacks.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was at the recycle center today, and it was warm in there. And I can't imagine what Saturday is gonna be, because they're saying Saturday is gonna be extremely hot, so.
so
Yeah,
maybe we should consider a shack out front that's
Yeah.
AC and heat that, and if we choose to have this person eventually do, take money or whatever, it can be that space as well. So it probably needs to be out front so you can see that it's manned and someone's there.
That's a good idea.
Along those lines, and I know, who knows how much longer this, the heat will last in the season, it could last another 2 months. When I ran some stuff up there last week, the only thing I saw was a little box fan. And I know in the fire department, I saw that there was a floor fan, but Jason, in your shop, are you air conditioned or do you have the big metal fans?
Nope,
Do you have the fans?
we have some fan in some areas.
I just think if Kelly's bailing, it would be nice to have a big metal floor fan that oscillates to.
And I just spoke to him today and asked him if he would like me to bring fans over, and he said he thinks he's fine right now, so I told him to just call.
Do we have them in the maintenance building?
We have some fans that would help, yeah.
Well,
Oscillating would be
Don't-
nice.
Yeah,
don't let him be too tough a guy, because it's
No.
pretty warm.
yeah, I pass out or something.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Greenberg.
Lori Yeager and council, can we bump up that number then in the park from 50 to 100,000? Can we bump
Yes.
that up?
Yep.
Would you guys be amenable to that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we'll actually get some better pricing on some of these things too. Like the pickleball courts and stuff, that's easy to find out how much they, and just call Anoka and see what they spent on theirs. So,
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
going in a couple years down, I would like to have us look at additional playground equipment. And I just read in the Ramsey newsletter today, the little park that's up in like the Rogers Lake area, that just had a very minimal footprint. They received hand-me-downs from, I believe it was Anoka, that replaced some of their equipment. And it looks very nice, I mean, in a picture, it looked very nice. But that is something we could look at too. In a couple different places I've been, they have equipment that is focused towards seniors, and it's focused on physical activity. So if anyone ever went to a Curves as a workout place, it's stationary equipment, and it's very light movement, but it does give you some exercise. And I'd like to sometime down the road look at that, in addition to some new playground equipment for the kids. Is that, when I look at what is in the park, that is what is used. There's constantly people on.
There are, you're right.
Yeah.
You should.
That new park they put in on our border there?
Yeah,
We were instrumental in getting that done.
I'm sorry,
We were instrumental in getting that done.
okay.
We worked with because they thought it was partly a now then, so they called us first. And so we got the new council members down in Ramsey interested, and we had a whole neighborhood gathering. Because that street there, once you hit 181st, is now then,
Is ours.
that's a dead end,
Yep.
which we talked about, that actually needs some big potholes filled into.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can we
Councilmember Blake.
put into our budget, adding some equipment to the playground at the park? Because that is the most used thing at the park other than the lake. That's used more than anything else. So why not improve that? Because it's really minimal.
Are you talking about Twin Lakes?
Yes,
Because I know this is the most used, anytime I'm up here, this is always used up here too.
and Twin Lakes is too.
Yeah.
I've been down there with my granddaughter, and there's kids on the equipment all the time, and here.
Yep.
But, there's nothing else for kids, and there's a lot of kids.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Blake, it really depends on what the cost of the playground equipment is going to be. You can spend $500,000, and so then now we're talking bonding and stuff like that. So I'd like to do a little bit of research and check and see what other cities are spending on equipment. Because you would not have that available in your parking or your park fund at this time. So we'd have to, issue debt or something in order to do that kind of a project. But we can certainly
Plan
put it
on
on a placeholder out here
Sure.
so that you have it, but I don't know what the cost will be yet.
Yeah.
But I
Might be
think
too high.
that that's where you also take a look at if other cities are upgrading and there's good equipment to be had, and what can we do to take advantage of that?
Yeah, good idea.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Metropolitan Parks and Open Spaces is continually upgrading theirs, and so what they have is not that old, so we could look at that. Also, too, the Minnesota Twins still have their grants, which is the grant we used to redo the Kohler baseball field at Twin Lakes. So, I mean, there are opportunities to help us with those expenses.
Okay, well, just curious.
So again, as we're talking about the plans here then, I think we need to revisit the interest. So if we're looking at 0.5%, so as Jason.
That's only
said,
like $1,000. It's not gonna be.
Probably more like 900.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to revisit all the interest rates there.
Yeah, and that's really not gonna make that big a difference, so it's not a big deal. Yeah, I can adjust those, but it's not,
So right now, it looks like the year ending on the park was
it's 61,800, according to this, and that's if you spent 155,000 this year on the well and on.
No, I'm saying
housing.
on the park.
Oh, park, okay.
Yeah, so yeah,
Sorry.
on the beginning, yeah, we're actually at 159.
Yeah, if you're gonna spend the Memorial Park improvements, I don't know if that's happening or not, but, you'll have 218,000 at the end of the year, basically. If-
We're starting with 218.
Right, I don't know if you're gonna get any dedication fees this year or not, I have no idea what's happening with the,
Well, see, that's the thing, we just got 13 lots approved on Brian's Bend. We have 3 concept plans coming in for multiple house
Okay.
developments. I mean, we're probably looking at one of our better years between this year and next year on park development fees.
okay. And I don't.
2,500 a lot.
Is it 25 a lot? I don't know what you're charging, so, yeah, I can adjust that too, if that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, because we,
About 13 lots this year and 13 next year?
well, the one development is approved for 13 lots.
Okay,
And the concept plans that we just got are 40-acre developments, so that's going to be typically 8. The Toft place up there by CST is going to be 8, depending on when they start developing that. But over these next 2 years, I could see reasonably dozens.
okay,
So we obviously always want to be
Yep.
conservative on your
yep,
cash side, on your
right,
revenue side, but it's certainly going to be more than 5,000.
sure, okay. All right,
There's 2 homes.
So we'll come back to, now that we got the chiefs here, everything under control.
Got taken care of.
So we had a discussion on the well. And so what we had said in your absence is there's 2 things that in the capital fund on the first page here. You guys have the document?
I have the one that's titled Projects Year by Year, but this is also different than the previous document that I had for capital, so.
So this is the one we got last Friday.
Yep, I wasn't included on any updates.
So the new well and the council chamber improvements are in there for this year, and we didn't know if that was still a reasonable thing between now and December. We talked about what you had said last week, you've got water, you've got to make sure everything else is taken care of first. So we can roll this over into 2022, but we wanted to keep it here in case that fits your schedule this year. And so I explained to them what we had talked about last year when we hired you, that geology, geography, location in the city, and then the potential for public-private partnership that was needed to be investigated.
Yep, and I guess for me, it's probably helpful to ask a clarifying question in regards to the capital fund. Is the capital fund rolled over year to year and we incrementally increase towards a goal? Or are we budgeting for this thing this year in the capital? because those are two different strategies.
Yeah. Generally speaking, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, when this is just a plan,
Yep,
and so, once it hits the budget, it's in the budget that year, and if you don't spend it, or if you don't use it, and that you generally roll it over to the next year, because it got there because you needed it, you know, in the first place, and so, just like the Sterling truck is still in there, the lawnmower is still in there, we need to replace that eventually, and so you need a well eventually, and that's why it's in there. Now, do you need it in 2022, or can we put it out to 2025? I mean, that's the concept we need to talk about.
yep, and I guess, to kind of piggyback on what you said, so the example would be, on the sheet that I have, it now says rescue for 2022, and it used to be the tanker. Rather than budget $125,000 for 2022, is the goal or strategy with the capital plan to divvy up that amount of money year to year. So let's say it's $125,000 in 2030. So we're gonna put $15,000 a year away into that capital fund to build up to that number.
Right,
Or has the historical budgeting process been, this is what we need this year, we'll put it in the capital plan, we'll make sure the levy matches that dollar amount, and we'll plug it in.
So we've had a hybrid.
right,
Okay.
And so what we're looking at is last year, we allocated in the levy $80,000 for a well. And if we don't spend it this year, where it's allocated, we'll roll that over. If it's Jason, did you just give him the current one we got?
Yep, I took a look at it. That is online, so what I have is projects year by year for fire, is
So we've got-
$80,000 for the well.
We've got tanker 31. and-
This one says rescue 31, and I have a different copy that says tanker 31.
Okay,
yeah.
so on the one we're looking at, and I apologize you don't have the current one.
Right,
Tanker 31 is in 2022 at $550,000. So in this case,
That's now a third.
so in this case, we would expect to talk about bonding if we're gonna do it all in that year.
right,
What we're intending on doing is identifying a 5 and 10-year plan and allocating resources to build to that. So we don't have to borrow, we can pay cash.
right,
So right now, if it's there and it's not used, it's rolled over, unless you say that item is no longer needed.
And what I would say is keep the $80,000 in there for the well, right? We never said that we weren't gonna do a well, and we don't have to relive the conversation from the other night. There is the intent, and there always has been the intent to do the well, so let's leave that money there with the intent that we can get to this probably tail end of August, beginning of September. Does that seem reasonable with what where we're at right now? I gotta get,
yeah, Mr. Mayor, Dave, you and I need to get together and talk and get things,
yeah,
Straightened out.
this would be the third
right,
kind
right.
of capital plan that I've seen in the
Sure.
past couple months,
Yep,
so
yep.
it's
It's a work in process, and so, you know, that's.
no harm, no foul, it's just
Yeah.
hard to keep up
Yep, and
when I
and
don't
I
have the
agree.
information, so.
It was
And we had dialogue a
last
couple
week.
months ago about the extrication equipment and mobile computers that were
Right.
on the sheet that I had allocated in 2021,
Right,
which is reflected on the sheet that I have as well,
right,
but is now moved on this one to 2022.
right, because that whole $600,000, I understand, was for the tanker and the extrication tools and the compressor, so you were gonna combine all your
Everything
major-
but the compressor.
Everything but the
Compressor's already
compressor.
paid for. Yep, because that was budgeted in capital.
Right, it is
We
budgeted.
presented that, and that fell a little bit short. We offset that with some gambling funds.
Okay, okay,
We did spend the $6,500 on hose.
okay,
The $6,500 for the air packs, that's the cost per, so the 8 in parentheses never got multiplied out.
okay,
So that should have been, I think Lori, did Lori, you and I talked about that?
Yeah, we
correct?
talked about that, yep.
So that
So
should
that
have
was
been
much higher.
50-something
Okay.
thousand for this year.
All right.
So that's kind of where that truck purchase with the loose equipment's gonna help offset some of that a little
Okay.
bit.
So here's the deal with the truck purchase, and that, I don't, I don't wanna get into the financing too much here, but, anything that we buy with a bond has to last at least 10 years. The lifespan has
Yep.
to be 10 years.
Yep.
So any equipment that we buy, we're doing like a blanket bond, and we can purchase any equipment that's gonna be over 10 years. And that 600,000 is basically to buy all your equipment that you need. Plus, we have some funds left over in the equipment fund too, to help pay for some
Okay.
things, so.
So to answer the question more succinctly, keep the $80,000. We'll continue to have that seated on our priority list. I did pull the documents that Lori sent me back in January. One was from Renner and one was from Trout. It looks like the Renner one wasn't the best option. And there wasn't a whole lot of, pardon me, there wasn't a whole lot of meat on the Trout one, so we have to go back and re-explore that piece, which we're more than happy to do. Just for and Lori, we can certainly talk about it as we go.
Yeah,
One of the things that is kind of always a goal of ours and has been a goal of ours is to not have a repeat of history in regards to coming to council and asking for a $600,000 acquisition that we haven't had time to structure and build a strategy towards, right? So Lori and I can work on what that looks like at contributing to the capital fund, especially on the fire side, year to year. That does a couple different things for us. One, we know that we're setting that money aside. It becomes predictable for the tax levy. It becomes predictable for the administration. The other thing that does is when we run into potentially significant failures of equipment, we're not caught at a zero balance.
right.
Right? So that really gives us kind of that jumping off point, and certainly the goal is to not have surprises. But just due to the nature of this transition and kind of where we came into this, we just knew there was gonna be things that we had to react to. But I do need to understand what those expectations are.
Yeah.
And if that's a discussion that the council wants to be involved with, or just directly with you, I'm trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, and
Right.
again, when,
I think that, one of the things here, as we're talking through this, I know Lori Yeager, last year when we went through our budget cycle, and we talked about the capital plan is really an April project. And I know when we went to league training in February here, that's one of the things they said. They went through the budgeting cycle and they said, the capital should be done in April. So when I got this, I'm thinking that there's not a lot of meat here to talk about what we're doing. And since we never had that discussion as to what we wanted to do or wanted to accomplish, or, again, we know what the chief has expressed to us as an urgent need. We really haven't talked about long-range planning yet. And so that's one of the things, we need to have that discussion. And so this is what I would have anticipated what we're doing tonight would have been our April gathering to say,
Exactly.
what is it that you want, so we can start pulling numbers together and put that into the budget. And so, I don't know how this will work, this year still with the meetings we have. Obviously, we have the sheriff discussion coming up and some options there. But it's one of those things where what you're saying is, here's some raw numbers, here's some starting numbers. I think it probably would be helpful, like the one that was sent out in June, to have a cash beginning balance so we know what we're dealing with. But to say, okay, what do you envision from the city? Because right now we're kind of brainstorming on the park.
Right.
You guys have numbers. Have you put together a budget that you would have proposed for this year? Has that already been worked out?
operating budget,
Operating budget and a capital plan, because I know back when you were interviewed,
Yeah.
there was here's what we think we know just from walking through the fire station. Last week you said, here's what we know now that we're actually running the equipment and it's not as good as we thought. So I'm guessing you have a capital an initial capital plan, and probably from our conversations during the interview process, I'm gonna guess you've got a long-range capital plan cooking somewhere too. Is
Yes,
that?
so what I've been working on in the background, and I think it was back in May, we had some initial contact about the capital, and that there was gonna be a capital meeting, and here we are. What I started doing in the background is identifying, particularly with the fleet, because that tends to be the most expensive piece, and SCBA replacement in its totality, right? So we can anticipate a 15-year life cycle with our SCBA. Our fleet, typically our larger apparatus is 20 to 25 years. 25 years is stretching it, but until we have a good snapshot of history on the type of mileage and usage that we're getting out of the entire fleet, it's a little bit hard to extrapolate if we're comfortable going to that 25-year or if we're gonna stick closer to that 20-year mark as far as miles, wear and tear, and utilization of the vehicles itself. Our smaller vehicles, the rescue and the grass rig, we would typically like to see on a 10 or a 15-year plan. Again, that's based on utilization and wear and tear on the vehicles and overall general maintenance. So what I did is just simply put it into a spreadsheet format, and it's certainly not where I want it to be yet. And you march out the life cycle of the vehicle, you figure out what the replacement cost is gonna be at year 2030, for example. And you divide that out by the number of years that you have available for putting money into that capital plan. Rough estimates from my perspective of what I was looking at, we're jumping off at about $95,000 a year just on the fire side to start putting money away year to year incrementally for those purchases. Now, again, that's why I asked the clarifying question to Lori is, what's the typical strategy with the capital plan? Because I think the unpredictability of trying to establish a year-to-year levy for larger purchases can create some confusion, and it certainly creates an inconsistency in how you're taxing the constituency to make these projects happen. If that's the council's direction, I'm more than happy to figure out a plan that works within that capacity. The downside to that is what I just alluded to is if we have a significant mechanical failure, if we have something that needs to get replaced on an urgent basis, now we're scrambling to try and figure out how we come up with $100,000 because the well failed or a fire truck failed or whatever the case may be. And I think that type of structure within long-range planning is less effective and certainly less efficient. So I have begun that process of mapping out that strategy that we use in St. Francis, we use in Brooklyn Park. St. Louis Park runs a very similar capital planning process for their fire department. It's not an uncommon budgeting strategy.
Nope, it's very common.
So as soon as I get that refined a little bit more, Lori and I can sit down and figure out what that looks like, or if that's something that we should discuss directly with council. Trying to get my hands back on kind of the operating side of things, wanting to send that information directly to you. Lori doesn't want me sending that information directly to you, so we got to figure out what that looks like too.
What do you mean?
Our operating budget year to year.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, generally speaking, the staff puts together a budget and presents it to the council at a meeting like this, and that's what we're doing here. Interim-wise, staff would not send anyone on the council directly their budget that they're proposing. They would wait until we are all together and we all meet and talk about the budget. And so I asked Dave not to forward, because I had forwarded him a budget that I prepared that was just an interim budget that I wasn't ready to present to the council, and he had shared it with the mayor. And I just asked him not to do that anymore, because that's not the process that I'm used to handling, and I don't want to have to, comment every time I make a change on something when I'm not ready to present. So that's where that conversation is coming from. So that's why we're all here tonight, looking at the budget and together and reviewing. And to that end, I have a 25-year improvement plan, which includes fire equipment, and it includes transfers from the general fund. I am getting you on that path to have an established equipment plan. And so you will have funds available out there in the future, I show that you'll have balances of $500,000 sitting out in this fund of ready to purchase equipment, you shouldn't have to go and bond again. But that is the ultimate goal, is to have funds available for the future. And we keep incrementally increasing what we transfer to these capital funds in order to do that, and to not impact your taxpayers greatly with an increase in their levy. So that is the overall ultimate plan. And yes, this is very common in a lot of cities. A lot of cities do this kind of planning, and that's how you do it. So,
And Mayor and Council, I think that this is new for our city. I think we've always, when something needs to be purchased, we've just gone out and borrowed the money for it. So this is why having somebody like Lori, who is seasoned in this, is a great tool for me to learn from, so we can start our city going down this path rather than borrowing money, bonding for it all the time. So she's very valuable in teaching me how to move forward.
And to be clear, I'm not saying
Yep.
one's better
Nope.
than the other.
No.
So
Yep.
I want to make sure that
We want to
that's
make
not-
sure you have money for your
Yes.
purchases.
You would be both.
Yeah.
yeah,
So, but that's the kind of the strategy that I've begun to map out, is that we'll figure out what the expected life cycle is. We'll figure out what the anticipated costs are. Unfortunately, one of the impacts that the CARES money has had, especially in fire and EMS, is it's jacked up the price of everything, right?
Wow.
There's a lot of walking around money, if you will, and the vendors certainly have leveraged that to their benefit. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
so Lori, so at some point we'll get to see what you've been
Tonight.
working on.
tonight.
Tonight?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Tonight is the budget process, so,
Well, we get to see what
yep,
Commander Schmidt has been working on,
Yep.
and you've been working on
Yep.
as well. Okay.
yep.
Lori, it's a bit of a double dip this first time because
It is, because we're way behind. We should have done this, the CIP stuff a lot earlier.
we're buying a brand new truck and then we're anticipating the wear out of that brand new asset as well, right?
Right,
So
yep,
It's not like we can start at 90, we're starting at 690.
right.
We have a neighboring community that's turning over all their trucks.
Which one?
The community to our south is
I was
getting
gonna
all
say,
their
it's
trucks.
not the community that way, so,
No, but they're gonna get a new tanker for 25,000, so.
I'm sorry, for how much?
If you look at their capital plan, 25,000. So I thought that had to be a misprint. I said that's maybe a repair of a tanker, but no, they're turning over the engines, the ladder, and the tankers. So I guess, part of this, not knowing what we'll see, so I'm looking at the capital plan, and so, obviously, one of the things that in our contract, we had said, you're responsible for a budget, so you've got to come up with a budget that's got to fit in with what else is going on.
right.
And so that is part of the deliverables that's in the,
Right.
and I do think that it's important for the council to get complete information.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainbow.
are there any more questions on the fire? Because I have a question on road improvement. Does anybody else?
Well, so I guess when it comes to fire, so if we go to
The only question is-
equipment fund on the last page. We've got a tanker at 550. SCBA Cascade is out in 2024 at 30,000, and I believe that's what we just purchased.
Yep, and that will not need to be replaced for quite some time.
So let me understand, so the SCBA 2002 was purchased in 2021, or what?
Correct.
2021, we purchased the SCBA Cascade.
Has that come through our invoicing yet?
Should.
Is it on site?
It's operational.
Or it should have.
We delivered Ramsey their SCBA trailer back today, so,
Who got the honor?
what's that?
Who got the honor? So, yeah, so SCBA Cascade, it says 2002, was that the trailer?
That was the year that the old one was.
Yeah,
That's probably the trailer.
okay, so we had it in 2024 at 30,000.
That's
And
not
actually-
gonna be there anymore because you don't
That's
need it.
gone because
Yeah.
it actually is installed and
Yeah.
operational.
But you know, Mr. Mayor, this is the kind of detail that Dave and I can work on, and then we can get a better picture of what's going on. This is not something that the council needs to focus their time on. This is something that staff and the consultant can work on together to get these numbers accurate. So we need to meet.
Well,
and
well,
talk
yeah,
about this.
I mean, part of it is Dave wasn't here when, we've had a capital plan in place.
Right,
We haven't funded it necessarily, but we've had a plan in place.
right.
And so this is part of it because those of us that have been on the council for a while know some of the stuff that Dave's doesn't know yet because he's brand new and you don't know because we've never had that discussion.
Okay,
So I do think it's appropriate that we have, going at least initially here, that we understand what Dave's looking for, understand what we've already had here, and, because when we had the discussion the other day, I see on here a thermal imager in 2023, and I thought that was part of what you said last Tuesday was part of the package.
Yep, and we can eliminate that component from the capital as well.
So it's gonna be-
So where, does it move into 2022?
Nope. Yeah, typically, Lori, what would you do?
you and I should get together and talk about exactly what it is that we're bonding for, and so that I can be clear on this. And again, Mr. Mayor, I would like to focus on 2022 because we are so late in our process that, we will talk again before 23 and 24 and 25. And this document is gonna change, and I don't wanna go through changing it tonight. Because I haven't had time to talk with Dave, and he hasn't had time to talk to me. And so, and we have a list of equipment together between what the Ramsey Fire Department had and now what Dave is looking at. I have a list of fire equipment that is on this capital that you're not even seeing because I've shrunken the document to only apply to the 5 years that we're looking at. I go out 25 years, and so you're not seeing all of the equipment that I have on my list, okay? And, I think it would be well worth our time together to get the 2022 equipment right. And then I can change this document going forward. But to try to do it tonight, I think it's not a very good use of our time here. We have to get
I'm
through
just
the
trying to
whole-
figure out if this is in 2022, because I thought some of this was in 2022, and so
Right.
I'm
And
trying to figure out if it is, where it fits.
well, and exactly, and that's what I think Dave and I should figure out, frankly. Because I can figure that out.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question, Mr. Mayor? Just so I'm clear, we're removing the 550 from 2022, and that's gonna be a bonded?
It's gonna stay there. You can see that I have the bond proceeds going in 21 at $620,000 on the very top. That's where the revenue is. Says total sources. And in 2021, I have $620,000. And there's a $20,000 cost to the bond. And then we're spending it in 22. You have 3 years to spend your bond money.
So in the capital improvement plan we had last year, we had 125,000 allocated for a tanker. Is that money in the fund somewhere?
Yeah, the money stayed there because you didn't do the tanker. So the money stayed where it is. You did not spend that money on a tanker. So now your tanker is $550,000 instead of $125,000.
So in the, where would the 125 be on?
It's gone now, it's not even, it was a projection, you know, it was a plan, and the plan didn't go through, and so the 125 is not there anymore, it's now 550,000. So it's not.
Okay, but last year when it was on there, weren't we putting money towards that?
Yet you have one fund that you have all your money in, and all of that money is used for equipment. If you don't buy that equipment, that money stays there. It doesn't go anywhere.
So, Mr.
So,
Okay, so Councilmember Rainville.
So then, if we didn't buy it in 2020,
right,
then it's it's in the 257.
That is
107 at the bottom of the
yep,
list.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
So my question is, if we had allocated that for a tanker, because again, last week we talked about,
Right.
would we be able to use that as a down payment and not have to borrow as much?
And you could do that, except for you're buying other equipment, and now your tanker is 500 and some thousand, I don't know how much it is, but,
600 is what we,
okay. I thought that
our
was,
potential, that's the high side that we're anticipating that we can go to.
and that includes all the equipment that you need,
Correct.
and that includes this SCADA that was purchased, or no?
The what?
The
SCBA?
SCBA.
No. No, that way,
CBAs were not purchased this year because the fund balance is 7 packs short.
I'm really confused, because I.
okay,
thought-
so SCBA Cascade is, strike that line. The next thing below, SCBA compressor was purchased this year and it's up and running. SCBA fill station was purchased this year, it's up and running. SCBA packs was supposed to be 8 times that number. They are,
2,000.
what'd you say, 5,300 a piece or 6,000 a piece?
Our most recent quote was 54 and change, 53 and change.
Okay, so that number is wrong because it didn't get a multiplier.
Yep, and that does make a difference in our balance.
And then the hose,
Is ordered.
and is that number,
What did we end up spending? Was it 62?
I believe I'm about around the $5,500 mark so far spent. Some of that also included the utensils to put water through. So it wasn't just hose, we needed couplings and other stuff that the truck didn't have.
so this is a realistic number here for 2021 is 6,500.
Correct.
And how about
Okay.
turnout gear?
We have
So,
not
so
spent
going
anything
back
else.
to the SCBA packs with the 8 there, they didn't purchase those because there wasn't funds for those. We missed that was a multiplier. It should have been 60 or 6,000 per. So it should have been more like 50,000 rather than 6,500.
And those were not purchased.
Correct.
Okay, so is that part of the 2022?
That will be part of what we will acquire with the tanker purchase.
Perfect.
And then the thermal imager, is that part of the tanker purchase as well?
We will likely purchase at least one, if not 2. So our preliminary numbers,
And is that number still good? God bless you. Is that number 7,000 still good on the thermal imager?
we can make that work.
Which one?
Thermal imager for 7.
Yes.
All right. And then the turnout gear, we typically have been allocating every year turnout gear. And we were building it up because we know we have to replace, and we know with new people coming in, we'll have to buy. And so what is the typical lifespan on turnout gear? 10 years?
10 years.
And what is our current status?
We have 1 set that will expire yet this year and 1 early next year. So we'll have 2 that are coming up in the very short future. And one of the things that we mentioned on Tuesday of last week was the Minnesota State Fire Departments Association did receive a grant for $1.4 million, which would help offset some costs of turnout gear. We did We are now a member of the Minnesota State Fire Departments Association, which is a requirement to apply for this grant. I've had early conversations with Chief Strike about how the reimbursement works for that program. It is on our list to contact Dee Dee Jankovic, who's the administrator of the grant, to make sure we understand how things get processed. And we will be utilizing that monies to hopefully outfit any new hires that come in this year.
So unless we change it, what we were doing is because we knew that the gear needed to be replaced, and so we were putting in 2,500 a year.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we no longer budget like that, and so we contribute a gross amount into the equipment fund. And then part of the discussion that we should have is what gets purchased out of that equipment fund on an annual basis, and then we also plan for the next 5 to 25 years how that money is going to be spent. So we don't actually contribute $2,500 just for the turnout gear. We contribute $72,500 into the equipment fund right now, and that'll go up. I'm projecting that you're going to increase that $20,000 a year until it's $195,000 a year that you're going to be putting into the equipment fund in order to replace all of your equipment in the future. And part of your equipment is the turnout gear. And so we don't actually say we're putting $2,500 in for equipment gear. We're putting in $72,500, and along with that balance that's in there, this is how much money you have to spend on equipment in the next 5 years. And so that's what you're looking at. And so I really needed to talk to Dave specifically about what this tanker is going to cost, and if the $600,000 is enough to bond for everything that you're talking about, because now you're talking about $54,000 for the 8 packs and what, 7,000 for thermal imaging and extrication tools of 30,000. So and I don't know what the tanker cost is still. I put 550,000, but I don't know, And so I'm thinking my bond issue is going to have to be higher than this.
So Chief, let me ask this. On the SCBA packs, we asked for 8 last year at 6,500 apiece, and we missed that it was a piece. But didn't you say the other day that we really wanted to end up with like 18 if we're going to have a staff of 20, wanted 15 to 18?
15 to 18, the 8 would get us to 15. So one of the things that, as we work through the bid process, so we'll go backwards just for a minute.
Can I ask on the,
Yes, sir.
the 7 that you have, what is the life expectancy on those?
They're relatively new. Was it 3 years old? 4?
About that.
Just to catch Lori up, so the authorized expenditure for the tanker was up to $600,000.
Okay.
So in just our early conversations with the vendor, we're looking at the actual purchase price right now, and again, these are early numbers, and I want to stress that, was $423
For
the tanker,
428.
$428.
Okay.
So that gives us some flexibility in the capacity of about $172,000.
Perfect.
That would obviously be able to
Yep.
allow us to acquire the air packs, thermal imagers.
As long as the equipment is
Almost.
10 years life. 10
Yep.
years of life. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
So that does give us some flexibility, and as I promised to council, we'll do our best to make sure that we come underneath
Sure.
as
600.
far as we can from that 600,000. But we would rather have the flexibility than not
Yep,
at
exactly.
this point.
So then Lori's, let me ask about the bond then. If these guys strike a really good deal
Right,
and we don't use the 600,000 for
Right.
the bonded purpose,
right.
what is our responsibility?
So
If we're
what,
saying this is what we're bonding for and
Right.
we come up with extra funds?
so what we're doing is we're putting in the bond as a flexible equipment replacement bond. And so if you don't spend 600,000 on all fire equipment, you can spend whatever you have left on the Toro or the truck, because those pieces of equipment are over 10 years old. So whatever you have left, you can spend on other equipment as long as it's 10 years of life.
Okay, so if there's additional fire equipment, and you say we have 3 years to spend the bond.
Yep, you do have 3 years.
So between the fire department and the public works,
Yes,
we'll make sure that money is allocated on a
yes,
10-year life item within 3 years.
perfect.
Okay, so right now, you've projected the bond, principal on the bond. At 60,000.
That's the payment going out. So this is a financial plan, and I'm planning on having you pay the debt out of the equipment fund, so you do not have to levy anything in addition to pay that debt. If we work it right, it shouldn't impact taxpayers. We can pay for our debt right out of our equipment fund, as long as we're transferring money in to cover that debt.
And that's principal, then what about interest?
The interest is less than 1%, so the interest is also coming out of here. You can see it says down there, the interest is $6,500 and so forth.
Okay, so you're saying right now, because, yeah, I have heard that
Yep.
bonds right now are going under 1. So.
Right. So this is just a projection, but that's what it's looking like.
So 6 is a good interest rate if it's 10%. So,
Yeah,
so it could be 600 rather than 6,000.
yes, probably.
And we pay
Well,
for.
no, because it's $600,000, so it's 1% of 600,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the professional service will be a one-time 20,000.
Yes, and so
And that'd
with
be
that
hours?
being said, that professional service cost will be there no matter what. If we don't issue bonds for equipment, that cost will get pushed over to the road improvement bonds. So you're gonna have to pay that cost no matter what. So it's a cost that is now being allocated out to the equipment because you're issuing equipment debt. But if you didn't do the equipment debt, you would still have that cost, and it would just increase the cost of the bonds for the road improvements.
So are these two separate bonds? The
No, they're
equipment and the
together.
road, or so
No,
you're putting
it's all one bond.
600 into the 2 million we're already looking at?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And so that professional service fee of 20 covers
$1,000.
both
Yep.
the accumulated bond?
Yep, it's part of it. So I think your total cost is like $60,000. And this equipment takes 20,000 of that total cost. It might be even more, I don't remember now. But yeah, and I believe that he is coming to show you this at your next council meeting in August.
He
Can
is,
you move it to September?
Bruce, oh, that's right. he's moved it to
Bruce Kimmel from
yeah.
Ellers.
The
It'll be
Ellers.
September.
It'll be September, yeah.
so when do we lock in on the bond before the interest rates change?
Yeah, it'll be September or October, so, yeah.
So is that just when Bruce is available, or?
Well, yep, and that's when we could get it on the schedule here, so as far as, because Lori and I have to meet with Standard & Poor's and talk about, the city of Nolden and get a bond rating, and then they have to issue that, and it takes time to do all that, and so that is why it's pushed out to a later date. But right now, he's projecting that rates are not gonna change drastically and over that time. So it looks like your costs are about $84,000. And so 20 of it goes to the fire equipment.
And then what are you looking at for a total bond?
Total bond issue is going to be 2.575. And that's assuming that we keep our AA rating after we have our conversation with the
AA plus,
Standard & Poor's, pardon me?
or AA plus?
Yeah, AA plus, yeah. And he actually, when he did this projection, he increased you know, he does a worst-case scenario as far as the interest rates, so he increased the interest rate by 25 basis points, and so we should be better than that when we finally do issue the debt, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir. Chief?
just so Joe and I don't misstep. At what point are we able to execute the contract for the purchase, for the $600,000 purchase?
I
Does
think,
that need to wait till next year, or is there cash balance that,
I think you can initiate it in September after the bond issues have been approved for sale.
okay,
So, because then it's just a matter of semantics, it's selling them, actually. So
And
after
then-
they are approved in September, you can go ahead.
and then for council, we will send the contract over for final approval before we execute that contract? So you guys will kind of know where we're going with this. So we're not just gonna enter into an agreement and a contract for the build, even though it's been approved. That contract will come before you. Typically, the way that I've seen it done is consent agenda, but if there's some discussion that you guys wanna have on that, we're more than happy to do that. To follow that up as well, we'll be presenting that we join the HJAC consortium, which guarantees our pricing on the fleet. So that'll come before you. There's no cost to the city to join the HJAC consortium, but it does lock in our pricing because the vendors do have to make that price available for us. And it eliminates the competitive bid process as well. So,
Is that Houston?
yes. There's two that you can, that people typically use. It's either Sourcewell or HJAC. We've had pretty good luck with HJAC, HGAC, so, I don't have a preference on either one. We just have some relevant recent experience with HGAC. If the city's not already a member.
Pardon me? It
Are
was-
we already a member of HGAC?
I believe so, yes.
So let's just verify that, then we don't have to do that. Sorry, didn't mean to get anybody off topic.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Alders?
so if we bond for this 620,000 for 2022, does that cover the 2001 snowplow truck as well?
It could, part of it, part of the cost.
'Cause that's in there at $200,000.
Yeah,
And what was our last estimate, Lori?
I don't remember offhand. It was
200,000.
200, it was
No,
over
It was like
200.
250,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
closer to the 250 range, I believe.
And I think because we still had to pay taxes on it, we were 270.
well, then I should increase that.
And
because I don't know.
unfortunately, the legislature didn't give us relief there this year, so. So we'll still pay taxes. Fire truck, we don't have to. But on the public works equipment, for some reason, the state, I think they said it would cost them, if they didn't collect taxes from city on public works buildings and equipment, then they would cost them $70 million.
What was the cost of that plow again?
About 270.
I will
Well,
adjust,
total package.
I'll adjust my numbers to that.
Oh, I did see, I've been looking at some of the neighboring communities, and again, I know we got a placeholder in here, some of the bat wings are coming in 45 and 65. We've got 80 here, but, so I don't, we just, when you stop and think about it, that's a lot for a mower.
Yes, it is.
And that's why I was noticing other cities are getting 16-foot bat wings, and I don't know, I don't know what brands they're getting, but it's something to check into as well, so.
Okay.
That being said, you know, we're coming into the year with 287.7 in that account. We're transferring 82.5 or 72.5 in. And leaves us about 40,000 if we buy,
Well, no, that number has totally changed now.
totally
so-
changed because of the
Right at this meeting.
So it does seem like there's, you know, again, we'd have to see it at less than 1% interest, does it make sense to keep some of our cash and bond? You know,
Definitely.
At what point does
Yeah.
this screw up your numbers, if, you know, and again, I guess we were having this discussion a couple months ago, we'd have a lot more time, we're up against the wall now.
Right,
We're up against the wall on interest rates maybe changing, but how much time do we have to decide what is a reasonable bond at 1% or less,
right,
and keeping cash?
right,
And if interest rates start to go up on cash, we can.
yeah,
So I guess the question that we need to know is, if we've got cash, does that affect whether we can borrow or not? At what point, you know,
No.
we talked about our fund balance getting too high at one point, and right now we're lower than we want to be. We want to get back up at that
Right.
50% or better.
right. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, currently you're, sorry, jump screens, but you're at like 50% or something like that for your general fund balance. I don't,
I think the number you gave us was
45?
45.
Yeah, okay.
And we
So-
talked about last year, no higher than 60 and no
Right.
lower than,
25. So you don't want to be at 25. But I think, you know, if we're going to move forward with the purchasing of the truck within the next 3 years, so in 22, 23, then for sure, I would maybe recommend it, just throwing that in on the bond. Because we're bonding, we're getting interest rates of less than 1%. And you can't invest money now.
No.
So, you know, it's a really good idea to bond, and I can still adjust, you know, the debt payment out. It'll still be 8 years or 9 years, and we still should be able to handle that, with the transfers in from the general fund. Yeah, I would recommend, if you wanted to, we could contact Bruce again and add that truck to the equipment bond to make it a little higher. So instead of 600,000, you could do 800,000, or you could do 850, or, you know, something like that. As long as, like I say, as long as the equipment is lasting longer than 10 years, whatever you purchase with that equipment bond is perfectly.
so what if we looked at right now, if we went with a bond on that, at 270, and we're at 2,575,000 on our current bond, so that would put us up at, 2,850,000.
But each one of those are being paid separately, so, you know, you're levying debt for the road improvements. You know, you'll be adding levy in 2023 for those. You're also getting assessments for those road improvements to pay for that debt. Here, you're going to be utilizing your funds that are in the equipment fund to pay back the debt on that equipment.
Right.
And how they get there is that you're including it is in your general fund levy and transferring it over to your bond.
Right, and so we're already allocating those payments, or at least a portion of those payments, into our budget every year. And one of our bonds matures next month. And is that the motor grader?
Yes, yes.
So the
So
motor
that's
grader, so that money, without affecting the levy, we just keep rolling over.
So that is the budget discussion that is next on the agenda that we can move on to if you'd like to. Move
So-
on to the budget.
So, but that would be, the idea is as these mature, we have another one maturing next year and another one the next year.
Yep,
But when we originally bonded for those 3 pieces of equipment, the idea was that without affecting the increase in the levy, if we kept that amount
in the levy.
in the levy and just rolled it into equipment funds going forward, that's how we're gonna seed what we were talking about before,
Exactly.
is this is the seed money that goes into future payments, and then
Yep.
we don't
Yep.
have to bond in the future.
Exactly.
And our hope was that these 2 road projects this year would be the last of our really big ones. And so that we can start putting money aside for future overlays and
Right, I'm,
whatever our 5 and 10-year road plan ends up
right,
being.
right, I don't know what that is, so.
So as far as the capital, then, right now you've got let's go to, my front here, page 2. So we've got last year's road project and this year's road project, which we're gonna bond for. So we can reach back, right?
Yep,
So we can bond over 3 years and we're going back 1 year and forward 2.
we're bonding this year for the 2020 and 21 road projects.
Okay.
And
So,
then next year, you're not bonding, but in 2023, you're going to need to issue bonds for 22 and 23 road projects.
okay, so that's presuming that next year we're doing $900,000 in
That
road
is
projects.
correct. That's presuming
And-
that, but I don't
And
know.
400,000 going there out.
Yep, yep,
So it's incumbent for us to know what the 5-year plan is.
right.
Because what we were told with this year's projects, once we got done with the 2 projects this year, the 1.2 million, that our big projects were done. I didn't anticipate another $900,000
So, Mr. Mayor,
combination. Councilmember Rainville.
that was gonna be my question is, this 900,000, 400, what roads are those? What has our engineer or Public Works provided to you to tell you we need $900,000 next year, 400? What are we looking at? I mean, what?
I don't, because I haven't gotten Shane to give specific numbers, I am ballparking that, and he said that was a good ballpark. But we need to, he has to talk with you in regards to road projects that need to get done over the next 5 years.
And we have asked him, a couple weeks ago, we did meet with Shane and asked if he could provide us with that information, and he said he is working on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
But he didn't anticipate big projects like we have now. But he said, these are good ballpark numbers, let me get some better things together.
yeah,
So these are complete, just ballpark
Yes.
guesses at this point.
planning.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
one of the things, so because we're looking at all these guesses, one of the things I'd like to ask is for council to support a promise from staff that we'll start this in April. We'll have hopefully valid numbers, so that we can look at what it is we need to do and then tweak as we go. But we're sitting here, it's July, we're guessing at numbers, and that's not the way to do it.
No.
It's hard for everybody, and it's, when we have new council members, my first budget season, if I hadn't had my budget experience through my employment, you'd be lost. It's not like your own checkbook. And Jason, I don't know how much you get involved in budgets at work, but it's just, the more we have, the earlier we have, and the more concrete the numbers we have, I think is to everyone's benefit. So I would like to request that we have this initial meeting in April of 2022, that staff has had the opportunity to have discussions, so that when we are looking at numbers, we have some valid numbers, with the understanding that things do change.
Yes, they do. Yep,
Nothing is a forever.
But you're right, then we're not
Yeah.
kind of grabbing things that we
Yeah.
might like to see in here, and how do we fund that, because we don't even know what the cost of those are.
Right.
If pickleball's between 5,000 and 200,000, it's.
right. Well, and Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think we did try to get you to meet with us back in May, and I guess that maybe there were other things that were on the agenda or whatever, but I know that I've prepared this back in May, and it's generally speaking April or May, because then the budget process starts in June, and so you want your capital planning to be done by May, And then your budget planning starts in June, but you don't meet with council usually on the budget until August. And so we're meeting early because I'm leaving the country in August. And so I wanted to meet, I wanted to meet in August 1st or 2nd or whatever, but generally speaking, our budget process would not start with you until August. And we would have gone through the capital planning stuff in April or May, probably May. And that's normally the calendar that you utilize, because staff needs to meet with department heads and discuss what their needs are. And so we can pull together a budget for you to review. And, so anyway,
So somewhere in that, then, where does the council get to meet before you've gone through all those machinations to say, here's our goals that we want to accomplish?
and that would be at the capital improvement and equipment replacement plan. During that, those are the big goals. Generally speaking, your operating budgets don't change a lot. You have to operate, and so your operations are pretty much gonna stay the same unless, there's new staff that's gonna be hired, or you need a public works person. But that's generally speaking, the administration would bring that forward. If he needs a new chief or deputy or whatever you call you guys, then he would bring that to you during the budget process in August, and you'd have that discussion during August. And then we would redo the budget by the end of August and bring it to you in September with a levy. So generally speaking, operations don't change. It's the bigger, like the park improvements and the road improvements and the building improvements, all of those big picture things that get discussed in May and that we incorporate into our budget for August discussion. So we don't, generally speaking, you meet with the council at a couple of work sessions to talk about the individual departments' budgets, but that doesn't happen until August, just because of your operation budget doesn't really change that much. It doesn't vary, so.
Well, yeah, I mean,
With the exception
you'd
of
want to
the
have
fire
that discussion to say if there is something that's going to change it
Right,
significantly, you want to have that before August saying, oh,
yes,
because again, you don't want to surprise in August saying, we're going up, we're going to raise the levy 10% because we got these things we want to add in. I mean, again, that's why when the league gave the training, they're saying, April. they're
that's
saying May.
that's for the capital planning, yes, in
Yeah, and
April
so-
or May, yeah.
So I would say, so the April was the capital plan, May was what other changes do you see of significance? Because you're right, typically the operational budget is
Right.
adjusted for known cost. This is,
Right,
we've never got around to using this, we've always got this extra money, let's apply it somewhere else.
Right.
And we keep ending up with excess, maybe we don't have to go that much. Or we keep coming up short, or we see some changes, significant changes coming this year.
right,
But you certainly want to have that discussion before you have staff spend a lot of time individually coming up with budgets that may not float in August.
generally speaking, staff prepares the budget for the councils to review. And like I say, the council really has a lot of input into the capital and the equipment and all of that stuff. The general operations, there isn't a lot of change. Now, this year, we got shocked with the law enforcement increase. That was beyond our control. And so that is something that we just found out a week ago. And that is going to impact your operation budget. And that, if we can move on to the 2022 budget discussion, I think, I'll meet with Dave and make sure I got the right numbers for the capital that's going to go into his budget. We'll meet again to review this after I make all of the adjustments and talk about where you want the levy to be, because come September, I'm going to bring back a levy for you to preliminary approve of. And so we do want you to have knowledge and feel comfortable with what is happening in the budget. So But I would like to move on from the equipment because I think we've kind of over.
Well, can we just talk, Mary, you said you had some road improvement. I've got a question on road improvement before we move on from this.
Okay,
Because you've got special assessments 2020 11040, or 111,040.
so this document you're looking at is a planning document, and these are my estimates as far as what income is going to be coming in, and it's all a guess, but it's only a planning document. This is not a budget per se. This is what I think is going to happen over the next 5 years, based on history and based on the knowledge that I have. And so I look at this and I say, I think you're gonna have to issue bonds in 2023 to pay for some road improvements, if in fact you do have road improvements. That may not happen. If you don't do the road improvements, it won't happen. And so what I'm trying to get you to focus on is that this is just a planning document. These numbers are gonna change. They are not fixed in stone. They are estimates, and they are based on my best guess. And that's all this is a best guess scenario. But it helps you planning for the future. It gets you somewhere saying, okay, if we're gonna issue debt in 2023, that impacts my levy. And so then I can say, this is how much the levy is gonna change in 2023, based on, oh, we're gonna have debt issues. And so that you can look at my projections of the levy increase and go, well, geez, I don't really like that, or, you know, we wanna change that. But always looking at a big picture and planning out. And like I say, these are only estimates, and it's based on my experience and my knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm not hung up on the individual numbers, other than there was nothing in 2021 for special assessments. So just
Right.
regardless of what the number actually is.
Right. So initially, I had talked with Bruce and I said I wanted to take the special assessments that were going to be done for the 2020 road improvement project and the 21 project and put those into debt service to pay for debt. And so they wouldn't go into the construction fund. Now, we've had a discussion since then, and we've decided, well, we're gonna put it in the construction fund. But it's not reflected here because it was after the fact, after I made this document. So this document will change again, because we are now going to put special assessments in 21. 22, I'm thinking that's gonna be a bunch of prepaid assessments, just like the previous year. That's a guess. I have no idea if that will really happen, but it's an educated guess on what happened in 2020.
So then again, you know, on these other ones, we're looking at interest earnings, and we know that's gonna be a fraction of that because nobody's paying interest right now on savings.
Right.
This interest is what the property owners will be paying.
No, this interest earnings on the fund balance in your road improvement fund. That's what that interest is.
So are those then extremely high then also?
They could be, but you're gonna have over $1 million in there at the end of 21. So, you know, I don't know. I didn't realize that we were gonna be, I see so my interest rate right now in there is 1% based on what your cash balance will be at the end of the year. So the interest rate in 2021 is based on 0.5% of when you issue the bonds. I'm gonna have 1.9 million or $2 million in there, and you're gonna earn some interest on it. So, you know, I can't tell you for sure what it's gonna be, but these are projections, and I put in projections, you know, 23, it's 1.5%, 24, I have 2%, 25, and it's all based on what your balance is, so.
Okay, so then the other thing that's come up recently with the MS4, so on this page, we have the road improvement projects, and then there's pond cleanup. And in the MS4, as that progresses, we went from mapping where the ponds were to actually identifying what's in the ponds. When you get to the certain stage and you identify that a pond's contaminated, then the city becomes responsible to dredge and haul to Illinois that muck.
Okay,
And so what I'm being told from a number of different cities is if we don't start planning for that, and so we've got pond cleanup on here.
right.
I don't know if you've had that discussion with Shane or not.
No, I have not.
But
No.
we need to start putting money aside for that
Yes,
because
you do. Yep,
when you're hauling material to Illinois, it's very expensive.
yep, that needs to be
And that's
in
one of
there.
those things that surprises people, like, oops,
Yeah.
now you gotta do it and it's unfunded.
Definitely, that needs to be put in here.
And we have never actually gone and maintained our ditches. It's one of the things that's part of the road plan,
Sure,
but we've never, because that's not something we've asked Shane to do.
okay,
But we have some fields that go right up to the road and there's no ditch.
okay,
And so, and other fields that have filled in with gravel over the years, over ditches.
yeah,
So I think that while it's never been part of our budget,
okay,
we need to have the question on MS4 fund for provincial pond cleanup.
okay,
And then as part of the road plan that Shane and Joe did years ago, we need to be looking at ditches and, culverts we try and do when we do the roads. So.
that's great information. So we'll get Shane to give us some numbers.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I have one other request on the capital improvement stuff. So our version 3, we've got June 3rd, July 20th. On our version 3, can we get the pages numbered and the revised date on it?
Yep, thank you.
And then Lori Strike, do you know with the discussion we had last week on the well in this building maybe being insufficient to cover the fire station and the pavilion, or maybe being defective, or maybe it's the tank or the pressure gauge, or has there been any discussion whether we need to do something different to make sure we have what we need at the other buildings, or?
We're waiting on Morkwell to come out, and they said they can't get out before August. But once we find out from them if there's a defective valve, or if the well needs to be replaced, I don't know at this point what the problem is.
So if that's the case, then we need to keep an eye on that for this as well, because that's. All right. Gives us all something to chew on.
Yes, a lot.
So, on the park, the dedication fees, can you, between the planner and the building official, we should have a pretty good idea what's coming in and
Sure.
the two options we typically do is you can trade us land for trails, or you can pay the park dedication fee.
Okay,
I don't get more realistic numbers there for you to work with too, so.
okay. Perfect.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I can't remember on the park dedication fees. So when the developer plats the lot and gets the approval, are all the fees paid at that time, or is it when the individual home is sold?
I believe it's when the home is sold.
Okay.
But,
I couldn't remember.
we haven't had many developments like
Right.
Brian's been to check on that.
Right. It's just one house.
So I couldn't tell you for certain, because typically it's on individual homes. We haven't had many developers come in recent years, so.
Okay.
But again, with the concept plans that Liz was bringing in between the Toft property and Skoquist and a couple of the others, we could see a significant increase there. All right, the easy one's out of the way.
Yes. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we'd like to move on to the budget discussion. And being that the fire department's here, and we don't want to have them hang around for the whole evening, if we could just all jump to their page, and I'll direct you to the page number. Oh, let's see here. rotate my view.
Fire management, page 10.
And
Oh, you're ahead of me. Okay. Okay, but on, further up, let's see, where is that?
Prior to that, you're saying?
Let's go to page 6. And this page just talks about what's changed from the previous year. And then we can go to page 10 and look at the actual budget. So what we discussed is that in 2022, we will not be getting any fire aid. We will be joining the Para Association, and the state sends the money directly to Para for our firefighters. So there may be some contribution, and we've taken that into consideration too. And I have their increase in fire pension contribution from the city. So there may be some portion that you're required to pony up to get them to the right amount. And we don't know what that is.
So what we negotiated during our legislative process here is typically you do not get state aid, and guys jump me when I get off trails here, but typically, unless you're in the program on January 1st, your department does not qualify for state aid until the following year. You have to be in there for a full year.
Sure.
We negotiated between Ramsey and the legislators that the now then station would qualify for 2021 aid payable in 2022 October.
Okay.
Yep.
Mayor and council, we'll get the state aid, it just goes directly to Para for their purpose of their retirement.
Right, but I'm just saying that it won't come to us and be paid out. But I just want to make sure it's understood, the state aid, we negotiated something that's unusual, and it will go to the firefighters, but it won't be passing through the city as it would have otherwise. So it still is getting paid to them, we just don't have to pay it.
Right. We don't get it and we don't pay it.
Right. So, the question was, does the city want to contribute anything in additional to that?
Well, you may be required to, Mr. Mayor. It may be part of the pension, once it is calculated out, what their pension or what their pension should be, and if it falls short, the city will be required to pony up to get it to the right amount. We don't know what that amount is gonna be. So, and yeah, in addition to that, you can contribute some pension, but that's another discussion.
And one of the things that we've been working with the state legislature on, and we hope to follow up on this next year, is being able to move to a defined contribution plan where we aren't subject to the vagaries of, are we short on this? But right now, we're in a defined distribution plan,
Benefit.
a defined benefit plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, we don't know what that's going to be because
Right,
we haven't been told by the state what that is yet.
that is correct.
We've done some early projections, and mind you, they are simply projections, but just trying to get our head around where this potentially could go from a liability standpoint from the city. I think we're reasonably comfortable at the $500 contribution mark from the city. But again, we have to go through the entire process of Para's formula and discover what the benefit amount should look like and figure out any disparities that may be created from that, where we can offset it with a city contribution, so.
And when you say 500 per firefighter? And in previous years, in addition to what they were getting in state monies, we did about 6,000, I believe.
It'll be higher than that, it's.
No, I'm
20
saying we did,
Correct.
and this would be closer to 10.
That's correct. And that's what I have in the budget.
So in this increase in fire pension contribution from the city, you're saying that $38.95 is increased over what we were
Right,
paying.
yep. That's correct.
And then increase in fire contract, that's because we go up that percentage each year, the three-year
Yep,
contract?
3%. And it just turns out that our testing and certification is costing more historically, so, and you can look at historical, I sent you a historical information, I think it's on page 10, that you would look at that, so that you can see a little bit of history for the fire department. So I have 19, 20, 21 projected for fire. And we budgeted 308 last year, and we're dropping the budget by $32,000. Primarily, it's the para pension contribution that we're eliminating, that we don't have to pay. And we're reducing some of the hours because we combined our training pay with our regular salaries, and so we feel pretty good where we're at here.
So with the intent to hire up to 8 new firefighters, what is that going to do to the testing and certification budget for this year?
So their initial certifications last 3 years, so that would be rolled into the fees that we would anticipate paying through the Anoka County Fire Protection Academy. So as part of the Fire Protection Academy, their certification exams are offered. They wouldn't have to recertify their firefighter 1, their firefighter 2, and their hazmat ops for 3 years following that initial certification. Where you're gonna start to see some of those fees increase is with the new candidates being required to go to EMT rather than EMR, there is a $140 National Registry test fee, and their annual recertification for National Registry is it 40 now, 20? $20 recertification fee every 2 years on the registry. Those fees, and Lori is correct, those fees do continue to creep up, and where we're gonna get kind of the sticker shock a little bit is we're now responsible for the Anoka County Fire Protection Council contribution as a standalone now, and I don't know what the formula was used with Ramsey under the JPA.
They were standalone.
They were standalone,
Yep.
so we're those fees go up every
Yep,
year.
Yep, a little bit. Yep.
Typically somewhere between 2 and 7% would be the high side, I would
Yeah,
believe.
yeah.
But those fees do escalate every year. That would come out of that same line item. So there's a number of different components that come out of that piece of it. Again, we're trying to create a budget that doesn't, A, create a shortfall for us moving forward. B, we are doing, to Ms. Rainville's point, there is a little bit of guesswork within our operating budget. We have some relevant history on how it operated with Ramsey. We have 3 months of true history on how we're operating independently. There are things that we need to budget for that currently are not in place, such as hiring officer or leadership team as we move forward. Those wages are accounted for in the wage schedule that was adopted by policy. So we need to make sure that we leave some payroll dollars available for that. The other component of it is making sure that our ongoing training schedule is funded appropriately. As we identify where we have some strengths and weaknesses, we want to make sure that our training schedule matches those appropriately. So we're bringing those skill levels up as we progress. So there is some components of the budget that we propose that are a little bit higher. Certainly we want to be financially responsible and not surprise you with a $350,000 or $400,000 budget. But from the numbers that we submitted in just the short history that we have, with an accurate look back, being an independent organization now, I think we're real close. But I think that this is going to grow and evolve over time as we get more of that data that we can extrapolate.
And so the assumption is, as you look at current budget and projections out, I mean, all that you just said about the training, the increase, I won't bore people right now with the communication system, but the fire protection communication system not being what we were promised and a lot more expensive, but those costs, we have to obviously control what we can control.
Correct.
And so I would anticipate, as you're looking at a long-range plan, which we didn't have that luxury of sitting down with the chief with this kind of detail before. So I understand that, that's where we're trying to project where we're going. But this year, with the potential of hiring 8 people, potentially even yet this year, we could have all 8 on board this year. And with the, depending on their experience coming in, and if everybody coming in has to go to the EMT level, what does that do to this number here? Because 8 people with fire academy training and EMT training, are we able to get grants for any of that, or is that full out of pocket?
Yes and no. So the state of Minnesota reimburses pretty highly firefighter training across the state. One of the challenges that we ran into with our organization is we had to be in existence for a year before we would qualify for MBTFE reimbursement. So with that being said, the strategy with this is to go through the EMT training first, right? And the reimbursement period is July to June. So everything that we have our new candidates go through from now July 1st to June 30th of next year, we will then qualify for MBTFE reimbursement on April 26th of 2022, that we would be able to submit those invoices for reimbursement. If we're still determined to be ineligible at April 26th, or if they do a look back and say, nope, even though it's within the reporting period, we can't allow you to submit until, for courses that are not completed till after April 26th of 2022, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We do have enough training funds right now to pay for EMT class if we hired 8 firefighters. They would start the next academy sometime post-January of next year. So we would be dealing with a new training budget, a new operating budget for 2022. Those funds would be replenished as part of that operating budget. That's where we would begin to pay for the fire academy from next year's training dollars, if that makes sense.
And if they're on board before that, they can operate without the training academy, depending on.
We will do some internal training. We'll certainly find ways to get them acclimated. For us, the biggest challenge where we see candidates probably wash out more often than they don't is on the EMT side. It's a very difficult course. It's typically 12 to 16 weeks long. It's a difficult test to pass. So we'll have a pretty good idea of how many candidates we're rolling over, but we're taking the risk in the beginning. Rather than get them through fire academy, then they go through EMT, and they can't pass the EMT training.
So how does that affect an experienced firefighter that may come in, move into our community, or come in from a surrounding community? They got to go through EMT as well?
If they're not, yes. The way that we drafted the policies and what was approved by council is any new hire moving in will be required to go, that'll be our baseline standard of training and expectation for new hires coming in. We grandfathered in the folks that made the transition. Part of that was to incentivize, come with us, stay with us, give us a chance. Any new firefighter, the standard is going to be emergency medical technician for all of the reasons we've identified in the past, right? Ambulance response times, continuity of care, the ability to advance medical practice within the community. All of those things become very important to the organization. That's why we set that standard. So we are confident that we'll be able to accomplish the EMT level training through our existing budget this year, with the hopes that we'll get that money back through MBTFE in the 2022 reporting period.
So then this number of increase in fire testing and certification of 1150 is reasonable
Correct.
with the budget we already have.
Correct.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I'm looking at this right, so the fire management fund was budgeted at 309, and we're only gonna spend 170? And that's all due to hiring these other 8 guys and bringing them on board?
That's what I'm projecting, that, all I can do is take expenditures through June and basically double them. And so this is where we're at. And I did a little bit more with the salaries, because I kind of know what the monthly cost is, and it's like 3,200 or 3,600 a month.
Okay.
So that's where that's coming from.
But fully staffed all in, we're thinking it's 275, 276 is
I believe
2022.
so, yep,
Okay.
yep.
And you're good with that?
We'll make it work.
Okay.
One of the most difficult challenges that we have in the type of organization that we run is really twofold. Retention has been an ongoing issue in the part-time paid on-call fire service for the last 60 years. Every fire chief, every community has struggled with ways to find people and keep people. The other piece to this is our run volumes continue to go up. And we cannot accurately predict year over year how many hours are going to be utilized, how many firefighters are going to show up to each call. One significant event can really throw off your payroll budget in a paid-on-call system. We're seeing that in St. Francis this year. We're 57% up year to year from 20 to 21 on run volume.
Wow.
We've had significant events this year. We really started off with a bang here, no pun intended. We came out of the gate hot here, and we had a lot of high acuity events happen in a very short period of time. So that certainly skewed our potential payroll for what 2022 would look like. But that is a challenge, budgeting payroll when we don't have fixed costs, right? So we always try to shoot that trajectory a little bit high, and it's not that we're trying to inflate our budget. We just have to be cognizant of the fact that if we do 200 responses this year, it may be 250 next year. And within those 200 or 250 responses, if there's even 4 or 5 structure fires that last several hours, that has a compounding effect on our budget. So we'll always come in a little bit high on our payroll, anticipating the unknown. Nationwide, you see a 3 to 10% increase in run volume year to year. What we're discovering across the country is coming out of COVID, run volumes are going up 25, 35, 50% in most areas.
Wow.
So it is a very transient number to try and hit. As we continue to work through this, we're going to get more years of true data, right? Of now then specific data based on staffing, pay scales, things of that nature, where we can come in with a little bit sharper focus. But just so everybody understands kind of how I approach the budgeting piece, we do overshoot a little bit on the payroll side. It's much easier to have a little bit of extra at the end of the year than to have to come back and go, we really didn't want that tornado to come through town, but it cost us a lot of money on payroll, so.
So one of the things, just for the council that wasn't active back then, when we originally set up the fire department, we had a chargeback to residents for calls. Because typically on homeowners insurance, there is a fire call amount. And because we weren't asking for it, we weren't getting it. And so most homeowners policies, I think, had $500, and businesses it was $2,000. So we literally put that charge on there. And a couple of years ago, you know, we thought if you're having fires and you got insurance for it, we'd like to get a piece of that back for the fire department. And people that weren't having fires shouldn't be penalized for those that were. It was decided by the council a few years back to drop that. It's something, again, we may want to revisit as costs continue to rise. If it's something that is a reasonable expense that's already in part of people's insurance package, we may want to do that, because it was, if you had a lot of fires, in those years we had a lot of structure fires, that made a difference. The other thing that we have is if there's an illegal burn, illegal fire, we do charge that back. And we have had one in particular that was over $100,000. It was a building that was an illegal illegal business, if we will, and operating, we didn't know it was operating in there, but it had a lot of paint supplies in a large pole building, and we went at middle of the night, and were there till 11, and they had to go back to put it out a couple of times. And that was one where we took payments on for years. We told them, you gotta pay it, and they did. They came in and paid it all off.
Wow.
We took a lot of grief because we were saying, we said, well, isn't that what the fire department does? No, if you've got a business and it's legal, then you paid $2,000 and we pick up the rest, if it's illegal. And so when we had, again, the crematorium, that was a legal business, but again, we went at 2:30 in the morning and that was a long fire. And that cost us a lot of money. And so we need to be aware that is that risk. And so you want to be careful how we budget that. Because we don't have the cushion anymore. But if it's an illegal business, we need to make sure they're being charged back.
Mr. Mayor, why did you drop the insurance payment? What was the reasoning behind that?
There were those on the council that thought it was unfair to people to charge them for fires. They're already inconvenienced by having a fire, and now you're going to charge them an extra portion of money. We were saying that as long as it's part of your insurance, well, there was an argument, maybe not everybody had it on their insurance, or maybe for some people you had to pay a little extra to get it on your insurance. I think we actually, 500 is typical in a policy. I think we were charging 2,000 for homeowners and 5,000 for businesses. And so if you wanted the rider on your homeowners, people needed to know they had to pay the $40 a year to get the rider. And that wasn't communicated effectively. If we were going to do something like that, it would have to be an educational process.
Yes,
saying,
definitely.
maybe we start with an investigation to see if insurance companies still are putting the $500 in there, and start with that. And if people can get a rider for a reasonable amount of money, maybe we can. But I think we need to be creative thinking going forward.
Mr. Mayor,
Chief?
is that something that was adopted by ordinance into the fee schedule for the city?
Yes.
Okay. Did that include injury accidents?
Yes.
And typically,
And that's where we've been going after insurance companies on, if they're local, we can assess, but a lot of injury accidents are not local, and it was a little harder to collect. Some of them just sent it to their insurance company, we got the money. But if they fought it, it was a little harder to collect.
just want to make sure that that was included in the ordinance and the fee schedule.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cities that do something similar. It tends to be a highly contentious topic. But I'm certainly open to council direction on how you would like to move forward with
What are we talking about, Mr. Mayor? I don't understand.
Personal injury accidents. So because
Like
insurance
a car
companies,
accident? So the person in the car accident is charged
their insurance companies, yes,
for
services
for
provided.
services. If we have to go
when the
extricate.
ambulance comes or something?
You know, if the ambulance comes, you're gonna pay for that, the insurance companies pay for that, but we're sending out firefighters, and they may extricate, they may,
Oh, the firefighters to come and help.
yeah. So if there's a charge from the fire department, and there will be, if we scramble people to go to the accident, you'll see that on the bills every month.
Okay, feels like we're drifting
Yeah.
here. Let's get back to,
the budget. So,
Well, I'm just saying, that might factor into the budget.
all right, are we done with the fire?
Any other questions for Joe or I on the budget?
So on the, on page 10, was there anything else? See, the printing utilities and professional services. What is that?
It includes the not the training, but the testing, the certification. Let's see here, what else does it include? It includes insurance, workers' comp. It includes all your electric, your gas, any kind of repairs that you might have. It includes the amount that we pay St. Francis, $77,325. And then it includes employment testing and things like that. License certifications, telephone, physicals.
Are you guys gonna be using the internet there?
Yes.
And they have a budget for computers and small equipment and stuff like that. I don't know about internet. Do you have internet there now? Oh, who's paying for that? Are you?
The city pays for
Okay.
it.
And is that CenturyLink?
Out of, yes.
So did we ever figure out the Zayo that
No, I'm
wasn't
still
actually
working
hooked
on
up?
that. I can't get a hold of anyone for that.
Do you have a name that you're trying to get a hold of? I
Yeah,
may,
to work right through the county.
oh, you're going through MetroNet?
No,
Or, I'm sorry, the county contact.
Anoka
is-
County, yeah. That's where our contract is through Brazeo.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
Chief Schmidt, do you test the firefighters yearly? Or do they have a physical yearly?
Typically, no. You can have them go through some sort of medical evaluation on an annual or every 2 year cycle. Some departments do participate in that, some do not. We haven't made a formal decision on if that's something we are going to institute moving forward. All of the candidates that were just hired went through a medical evaluation prior to hiring. But that's certainly something that we can look into if that is what the council
It
wishes.
was mostly a question of curiosity, so there's no testing for illicit drugs in firefighters year to year?
No, and yes and no. Let me give you some context to it. If there was a significant incident, vehicle crash, somebody got hurt, we would certainly ask the employee or require the employee to go through drug and alcohol screening, more as a protection towards the city. Where that falls off from a requirement standpoint, if you will, is firefighters are exempt in the state of Minnesota from possessing, they don't have to possess a CDL, a commercial driver's license. If they were commercial drivers, they would be subject to random drug screening. Right? But because we have an exemption, there's not an ongoing requirement for drug and alcohol screening. We do also have a clause within the policy under reasonable suspicion that we can implore somebody to submit to drug or alcohol testing based on behaviors. Something happens, right? We do have that authority within the policies and procedures.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainbow.
to Chief Schmidt, but all new candidates have their medical.
Correct.
So right now, the existing just had it, and the new 8 will have it. In 2 years down the road, we'll look at whether we want to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, anything else we need to know on fire?
I'm burned out.
And we haven't even gotten anywhere. We haven't got one department done. We are gonna zip through the rest of this.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainbow.
we have gotten a lot of information tonight, but it's information, I'm in my 3rd term on the council, and we've never had the type of information we've received since we've been with St. Francis, and so I truly appreciate it. If we're gonna be voting on things and understanding things, we need to know, and so I truly appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you. And as I said last council meeting, we're all kind of learning here a little bit. And our desire is to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. And please know that if there's something that you want handled differently, let us know. We're about as flexible of leaders as you'll find. We just want to make sure that the group that's making the decisions has the information that they feel that they need, that they can make reasonable decisions. They're not going to pick up the phone and complain to the fire chief, right? They're going to pick up the phone and complain to you guys. So we want to make sure that we equip you guys with everything that you need. So our
Perfect.
phones are always on, our email boxes are always open, so feel free to reach out at any time.
And
So-
as the elected officials, we are responsible for the bottom line, so it's important that we understand what that bottom line is, so.
And I think one of the things with the fire department, because what's going to come up is the questions will come to the elected officials. Because these numbers will go out there and they'll say, well, gosh, Ramsey only wanted 160,000 for this, and you're paying 260. It looks like we messed up. But we will need to understand the operational costs compared year over year, because what Ramsey wanted to charge us 160,000 for is what we're paying you 75,000 for this year. And that's the number that needs to be compared, and there will be additional costs because we're setting up. That we would have gotten a truck either way had we known what we were doing. So we just need to know that the operational costs are comparable once we settle in here. And that's the information we'll need to say, right now, if you're asked, the 160,000 that Ramsey wanted a year, these other costs were in addition to that. We have a fixed rate of 75 going up 3% for 3 years. We have a fixed rate there that we didn't have a guarantee. It was 160 plus whatever it went up with Ramsey. So that's the difference. It's not apples to apples. It wasn't 160. It was plus operational costs, testing, and everything else. So, and we're expanding the department. So, but those would be important for us to know because we will be asked.
For sure. And feel free to punt some of that stuff off to us too. We're more than happy to walk them over you if we have to sit down and have a cup of coffee with the resident and explain kind of why we're doing what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good night, and have a good night.
Okay, so I am, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to take you back to page 2. I have done a synopsis here of the total general fund changes, and they are listed here for you to review on one page. So in the revenue side, general fund operations, the levy is going up $221,580. And you can see below that the revenues and the expenditures go up by the same amount. And the reason why the revenues are going up, the levy's going up so much, is that we're not going to use any fund balance. We budgeted to use fund balance in 2021 of $96,425. I have now rolled that into your levy, so you're not using any fund balance. And then you can see down on the salary side, on the expenditure side, your biggest increase is your law enforcement contract is going up 44%. It's going up $114,000. And that is your biggest increase.
Okay, so we got an email this afternoon.
I saw that.
Somewhere here.
And I don't know that, currently, I don't think you have time to go out and see if you can contract with another city to see what the costs are through another city versus the sheriff's department. But I don't know that you have any control over this contract.
Well, we have a little bit.
Okay?
Because I was watching the sheriff present to Oak Grove, and they said they're open to options. And so, where is it here?
Mr. Mayor, I believe that, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I believe that meeting with Oak Grove is reflected in this. Because what they're saying is, instead of, excuse me, starting with additional hours January 1, they're giving an option to start July 1, which is what I believe Oak Grove did.
No, Oak Grove did April 1.
Oh, they did April 1? Okay.
Oh, I see. So you wouldn't incur the full cost in 1 year.
So Wayne sent out to the council this afternoon,
Yeah.
Okay.
12-hour coverage effective July 1st, and it looks like it saves us about $60,000.
Well, that would be huge.
So,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
is this us having a full-time person here they were talking about?
This is a person here 12 hours every day of the
12
week.
hours every day.
Oak Grove increased to 24/7. So they are now gonna have somebody in their city 24/7. And they'd certainly love it if we would too, but at this point, because it was such a sharp increase while we're setting up a fire department, the option that's been presented here is we could start in July, and that would be a net cost of $312,997, because we would get the state reimbursement from state aid, police state aid.
But then the next year we go to full cost.
Yep,
Correct.
Okay.
But it gives us a chance to
implement
wade
it,
into the water
much nicer,
and plan.
yeah.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if you're thinking that that is the direction that you want to go, I can adjust our numbers and that will change your levy increase substantially. So,
I think it's better to wade into it, because when I saw almost 8% increase, I thought that's a choker.
so let me just tell you how that impacts. So right now,
And there's no option to keep what we have?
I think so.
I'm going to say, and that's the negotiation we have on August 5th, but listening to the sheriff discuss it with Oak Grove, I don't think so.
They're not giving
I-
the options.
I think, while they say it's a budget negotiation or a contract negotiation with the sheriff, didn't sound like it was real negotiable. I mean, when Commander Heath has been here at meetings, it sounded like, it's, again, you're gonna hear the same words. I've heard him present this to other cities as well. They want 50% proactive time, and we're 40. Oak Grove was the same, they were 42 or something. And they're trying to push more towards 50% proactive time. That's always been his target, but because people were wading into this and it was a new contract for him, he allowed the 40%, but he really wants to get closer to 50. And by having the 12-hour shift, that gets them there, where they're out there looking to prevent things rather than just reacting to things. Now, what that also means is and this is a discussion we have with the sheriff, but I'm saying for a budgeting standpoint, if we concede we don't have an opportunity to start our own department or go somewhere else, and those of us that have been through that, it's not realistic. It's extremely expensive to have a police department, and the
Yeah.
liability alone right now,
Yeah.
staffing alone. There was a report yesterday that people that, a neighboring city was advertising for police candidates. They would normally see 100 candidates. They had 13, and they might get one out of those 13.
right,
Cities that were getting hundreds literally before are getting dozens now.
It's just.
So I don't think it's realistic. I think the sheriff knows that. It also, from a liability standpoint, the county accepts that liability. Car goes down, they just roll another one out. And it doesn't change our cost. We have a fixed cost. So it really is a known entity. It's just going to be more expensive. If you looked at that Plymouth Financial article that I copied in the last newsletter, their police department was the majority of their budget. It dwarfed
Oh,
their
yeah.
fire budget.
yeah.
So I do think that as expensive as this is, certainly we can talk about options, but you've got the proposed contract. There's not a lot of wiggle room in there. This was the best I think we're gonna get, is to at least phase it in.
So, Mr. Mayor, the phasing, currently I'm showing you have a gross levy at 7.60% increase, and that's with the full-on contract. If I reduce that by the $60,000, in other words, you're gonna save $60,000 in this year, your levy increase is only 3.98, so it's under 4%. So it gets you down quite a bit, 3.5% decrease in your levy.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Rainbow.
I have a question for Ms. Strike. I believe that I had sent you, and I can't find it in my outbox, but I believe after the sheriff was here and talked about the $114,000, that I had maybe sent you questions that I had, because some of the things that came up was, they'd like a substation here. Well, what's that cost? Where do we put a vehicle? Additional terminals and things like that. And if you could look for
I'll
that,
look
and
for
I
it, yeah.
thought I would ask that it be forwarded at council, just that there were questions, and I remember sitting in the car typing it, and I
I don't recall it, but I will
Okay.
look for it.
All right, I had numerous questions as far as, because they're increasing this by $53,000, but what are the additional costs
That we're-
going to
Right,
be liable for with what they wanted as a 12-hour
Yeah, they want a
shift?
substation, I
So-
remember that.
Yeah,
So again,
Yeah.
in listening to that discussion in the Oak Grove council meeting, that was one thing that came up. If you're gonna have 12 or a 24-hour coverage, can you keep a car in the community? And we had that question to Commander Heath, and he said, if you've got a garage, we can park it in a place we can do paperwork. Now, with the SCBA trailer out of there, we might have a spot in the fire station that's an empty bay. We have a radio room that's got a beautiful desk that they only run in and run out of. And if, he says, otherwise, they're taking that car back to Andover, or wherever the sheriff's office is. And that's all part of our clock.
yes. you're
So
down
if the
with
car is here and they can do their paperwork here, their clock starts when they drive in and pull it out of our spot. So it does make a difference on actual amount of time they're in the city. If we had a spot in a fire station or a building that they could keep a car and use, if we use that as a public safety building. Now, we haven't discussed that with the chief, and I don't know what, but I know that they had one bay that was the SCBA trailer.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
I think that would be a great idea if he's amenable to that, if they agree to that. Lori Yeager, one of the things that you brought up is if that budget for the police does drop a little bit, our overall levy increase could drop
yes.
significantly. So when I look at page 18
Okay,
and year 2021, 7.62,
yep,
you know, I think we could explain to the residents, this is because we got a brand new fire department. The following year, which is at 9, I'm wondering if we could absorb some of that into this year, so then year 2022 isn't such a bump.
okay.
What do you think about that, council?
I mean, well, again, you're projecting out, what was the math behind the increase next year? What did you see as a,
The debt service is gonna go up. Your debt service goes from 81,000 to 192,800. So your debt service,
and that takes into account the payoff this year and next year?
yep,
Well, we could do this, anticipate that 2022 is when we explain to the residents the bump is from the fire department.
and it really isn't. It's that the increase is not, it's from, the increase this year would have been from the sheriffs, basically.
Okay.
And so, and the increase next year is primarily the debt service going up by $110,000. So
And was the debt for the vehicles?
it's the debt for, it's partially the debt for the vehicles. The vehicles are kind of wrapped into your overall general fund levy, and that's going up $20,000 in 2023. And so it's partially the equipment. It's also, it's the road improvement that is coming on. We're issuing $2 million and the payment is due.
So we're gonna be seeing, this bump is mostly coming from Rogers Lake and
Yeah.
Krypton.
Well, it's coming
Well-
from the 2020 and the
Yeah.
2021.
It's Rogers Lake, it's Ebony Garnett, it's
Yeah.
Krypton, 189th, 190th.
It's
Yeah, so
2
our
years.
our two worst road
Yeah,
projects,
it's
we're gonna
2
feel
years
the
worth of
bump.
projects.
And
Yep,
last year's road projects.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
This
It's-
also includes last year's.
all right, so it's not really a fire department.
It is not a fire.
It's a
department.
bump in the road.
Yeah,
Elders, come on.
But part of that 2.9 million bond is a fire truck.
right,
And a plow truck.
yep,
So you're talking about potentially 900,000 of a 2.9 million bond. So a third of
Right.
it, almost a third of it is equipment.
yep. A part of it is equipment, but we're actually not, that is not included in your debt tax levy. So what has happened is that you've already
Okay.
created an amount that you're transferring to
We're
your
paying that out of
equipment
fund.
fund, yes,
Equipment fund.
that you're paying out of your general fund. Now that I'm projected to increase by $20,000 next year. So that is a small part of this increase. But if you look here, you can see on the left-hand side on page 18, you can see right in the middle, it says general tax levy. So your tax levy for your general fund, I'm projecting is gonna go up about $50,000 next year. But your debt service levy is going up 110.
Yeah, there you go.
And so that's the largest part of your bump. And there's really nothing you can do about that. That's just doing your road projects and now you have to pay for them.
Right.
So I may be able to make it a little bit less depending on how much prepaid assessments we get. You know, and so then I can, wiggle around the amount that we have to do and increase it slightly. So, there is a little wiggle room there, but not a lot.
But the interesting thing is you look at the debt tax levy, it's been 140,
Yeah,
1920 we were 193, 179, this year we're at 81.
right.
Because we didn't
You
do anything for
You
last
lost two of them, yeah.
And so that's part of it.
Yep.
But next year at 192.8 is the
Yep.
same as 2 years ago at 192.9.
That's correct.
And then you see from there it goes through the roof.
But that's my projection of you having road improvement projects. And so I don't
If
know.
that 900 and 400 and 400 doesn't happen, then those go down.
That's right, then this doesn't
Yep.
happen. That's correct. And it's just, just for you to take a look at to see what's going on. And more importantly is the tax capacity rate. Your tax capacity rate has actually gone down the whole time. So that's the rate that gets applied to the residents' property. And that continues to go down because the values overall in your city are going up.
But the dollar amounts may still be higher.
The dollar amounts, if you go down to the residential tax scenario on page 19, and this is what I'm projecting for 2022, is that an average home that's valued at $270,000 is gonna go up $40. A value of $400,000 is gonna go up $56. A value of $570 is gonna go up $95. And that's a year, that's not a month, that's a year.
One more
So,
time, if it's 225,000, it goes up $46. 510 goes up 105, is that how I read that?
where are you at now? Oh, no, you're way over to the left. Go all the way over to the right. And that's, the darker shade shows you 2022 taxes paid, okay?
You're saying a market value of 570 is going to be a taxable value of 570, and they're going to pay 1,400 in city tax.
That is
Which is
correct.
$95 more.
A year
Than
than
they
they
did
did
last
last year. That's correct. That's correct.
Which won't go over well.
But, no, that is,
But see, that's again why I wanted the distribution in the newsletter, because that $1,400, how much of that, their tax bill are we getting versus what they're actually paying? And the city's not getting
oh yeah, this is just city tax. This is only the city.
Yeah, but I'm
portion.
saying, they're gonna say, but that's not my tax. Well,
Right,
that's the
their
city
tax-
portion of it.
Right, their taxes
But the
are probably
school and the
3,500,
county
yeah.
are gonna be
Right.
Yeah,
significantly more than this.
Yep, you're right.
yeah. So if you look, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
yeah, if you look at the 570, which I think is about where mine came in this year, that might be a little bit low. My tax bill is six grand,
Right,
and the city gets 1,400.
right.
So-
And it's not, the other thing too is the taxable amount of the value of your home is determined by the county. We don't determine that.
Right, they're the assessor.
Yeah,
Well,
the
actually,
assessor
our
is-
assessor does.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, the
Yeah.
county is determining what our values are.
Right.
We don't get to determine that.
Right.
So I would say we probably need to put another category on there because 570 is probably closer to mid-range here now.
Yeah, see, I don't
Yeah.
know what your mid-range
Oh,
is.
there,
We've got a number of homes right now that are listed between 1 and 3 million.
yeah.
So I should maybe eliminate that first line and
I
make
would, yeah.
the 398 the low side?
I think the assessor, when he came out to my place, he said, there's nothing in the twos anymore out here.
Oh, okay, oh, that's good to know.
There's what?
Nothing in the twos.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's.
I think he
been-
was, yeah,
I don't
I
think
think
that's
probably
true.
nothing under 2 is really what he meant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
that's
gotta be
very-
something in the
so
two.
that's
Oh, yeah,
unusual.
we do, but
Yeah.
the
There
average.
hasn't been anything that has sold. The average sale in the last little bit has been over 500, and they're selling in about 2 days.
So,
Yeah, so I think we need to go up on
Eights
the
and
higher end.
nines.
okay,
Yeah.
I can do that. I can add like 850,000 or something down here for another price range.
Yep.
All right,
And so down below, you're saying, again, on the taxable value,
yep, monthly
the
cost.
monthly
City.
cost,
Yep.
not the increase, but you're paying
Cost.
$50 a month on a
Yep.
$256,000.
Right. And I always like to, compare that to your cable bill or something. And you're getting a lot of
We don't have
services for
cable.
$120.
We don't have
I mean, you
cable
get
up here.
police, you get fire, you get, your streets, everything.
The lorry,
Yeah, yeah. So, but now if we want to go back and look at individual changes, I'm open to that. I did do the general fund on page 6. I started with the mayor and council had no change at all.
So in that, I noticed, well, you're going just through the changes. I was going
Yeah.
to say, in the expenditure part,
On page 8,
yeah,
okay?
the mayor and council has salaries and benefits, that's unchanged. What is maintenance and contract services?
That's your travel, your training. It's your training budget, basically, is what that is.
Okay. 'Cause I'm thinking, what maintenance are we,
Yeah,
It's mostly
are we not
contract.
cleaning up after ourselves?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's your training budget, yeah. And then as long as we're on page 8, let's just go through office and administration. The year before, we had budgeted for a full-time position, and we didn't hire that full-time position. Lori's decided to just go with a part-time position for 2022. And they're also, they've changed their health plans, and you're saving money through the new health plans that they are switching to. So the council's saving money, or the city's saving money through that.
So let me ask on that, so the projected for 2021 is gonna be 180?
Yes,
We
because
budgeted
we had,
255.
we had only had a part-time person, and we had, some staff was missing during the year.
So, and so when that staff was out, we didn't pay?
No, you paid part-time, I believe.
Yeah, but I mean, so when our deputy clerk was out,
Right.
Yeah,
we
you don't
didn't
pay
have
that.
to,
You don't pay that under there.
So,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
couldn't that clerk have taken like her sick days or her
That was-
personal days or something?
So that was all eliminated before the benefits kicked in, yes. All personal and vacation days were brought down to
Utilized.
0, and then the benefit kicked in.
Yep.
That's correct.
yes.
All right,
so, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
so
Rainville.
Ms. Strike, so when, what health insurance now do the employees have?
It's the same insurance that we had before, which is
Okay.
Health Partners,
Okay.
but it's a different plan
Plan,
called
okay.
PEIP.
Oh, it is the PIP that I
Yep.
sent over.
Yeah.
So
Alright.
it's saving the city and the
Employees.
employees money.
That would have been nice to know.
That just happened.
Yeah.
We've been, yeah.
Well, and I included it as a note up in the area where it said, I guess I didn't, I just said salary benefit changes. Never mind.
Yeah, I think it was a discussion we had last year, I think that's what Councilman Rainbow was saying,
okay.
it's something she's been bringing up for a while, so
Oh, okay,
it was nice to know that it's actually,
Yeah,
was as good as we
implemented.
thought.
Yeah, sure. Okay, and then, the printing, utilities and professional services, I'm just moving that back down to general government. We had thought that maybe moving it up to administration was a better idea, but it keeps getting charged to general government, so that's where I'm leaving it. Then you're gonna have an election next year, so that's a whole new budget.
So let me ask on that, so last year, 2 years ago, we had a presidential election, it was a big deal, it was $8,300, $8,400.
It
Now
was
in an
11
off year, we're talking about 10,000 for an off year?
You know, I'm just,
Because we would have primaries, we would have,
I'm just throwing out a number, just, I don't know how much it's gonna be. The last year cost almost 11,100 total, and now I'm projecting it'll be $14,000.
yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at bottom line there. Yeah, so I'm just, my question is, from a presidential, which is typically much more rigorous.
Intense, yeah,
Yeah, and costly.
right.
It just seems to have,
Too much salary.
to have that much more in an off-year election just seems high, but.
Okay. I can reduce that back down to, but I just don't know because I think I think salaries have gone up so much from 2019, is that when, or 2020? By 2022, I mean, people are getting like 16, 17 bucks an hour, and I don't know what the elections.
We don't pay that.
Well, I know, but you might have to in order to get people to work. And that's the bottom line is that.
Well,
salaries-
and so with the new voting procedures, and I just wonder if we have to rethink some of this because we're paying a lot of people to sit at the polling place where not as many people are going there, but we're wearing you guys out in the office with all the early voting. And if they keep doing that, even though it's an off year and we don't get near the turnout in an off year, it's a fraction of what we typically do in a presidential year. I just think we need to realize that we maybe need fewer judges and more help at the office.
Well, we either pay them at the polling place or we pay them in the office, but I don't feel we were overstaffed by any means last year, and that's about the same amount of people we have at a normal election. So we didn't add to the staffing last year. And I would hate to remove staffing for that, for the 2022 elections. But we can adjust that and just say we're, hopefully gonna pay the same rate. And we can bring that down to the 11,000, maybe 12,000.
Yeah, we can bring it down a little bit, yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainville?
Strike, do we have a percentage, an idea on the percentage of if we have 3,500 voters, what percentage of those did the early voting versus the day of?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I can go back now and find that information, but during the elections, I think we can find that, and there's gotta be a record of it, I would guess.
Because that would help and whether or not, if we're having more and more people doing the early voting or absentee mail-in.
But COVID is gonna put a huge
Yeah.
left field in that
It's
number.
gonna change it. I think there's gonna be more,
It's true.
more in-person early voting, I would guess,
Yeah.
next time. So they're not, even
I would
though-
say even without COVID, it would, just because people have gotten used to it.
People got used to it, yeah. I never
It's
thought I'd do
easier.
an early voting. I mean, I like doing it the day of
But
and
then,
I went early.
do we hire someone to help during that time? Because it takes away from your work and everybody else's, that
Yeah.
you should be able to do your daily grind.
Yeah, and that's something we can do is shift the judges over into the office and try to get more during the early voting than at.
Yeah,
the
so you
polling.
guys
So if we keep it more like 12, which is higher than we normally would do in an off year, But because there's unknowns there, and we could switch judges to the office, that covers that then. Because we did the whole thing last year for 11, so.
Right, but now you can see there in 2021, we have a rental fee that we have to pay annually, and it's almost $1,900 now. And that's not gonna go down, that's from the county, so. So,
Nice, give us new equipment, and make us rent it every year.
so there you go.
Unfunded mandates.
So I could probably get it down to 13 something, you know, but, I wouldn't wanna go much less than that. In total. So
You know, the
I'll
local
change the
government
salaries and
officials is looking
benefits.
for
Huh?
discussion items.
Yeah.
So that would be one of them. Local government official meetings coming up, they're gonna start those again. And they're looking for topics to discuss.
Okay. Okay, so we'll adjust the election salaries. All right, and then the next section is the finance and assessing. And so we have the accounting going up about $1,100. That's me, basically. And it's just based on historical use of the accounting of my services. I just think we should budget for a little bit more than what we're budgeting in 2021. It looks like we're gonna go over budget in 2021 a little bit. So, and then the audit fees have, last year they were $96.50. This year we're projecting only $3,800, and the reason for that is because we're gonna go out for an RFP for auditing services. And generally speaking, an auditor does not start work until January of the following year after year end. So your audit services won't kick in until January of 2022. And I have $9,600 in there just as a ballpoint. I don't know where it's gonna come in at, but it'll probably be right around there. And we will definitely, we're gonna go out for RFPs. Once we get the RFPs, we'll set up a meeting with you to review all of the RFPs that come in. And then, let's see, where else? Where was I? Oh, yeah, assessing services. I just think that, I'm projecting that she's gonna be at 28 in 2021, so I'm increasing it to 26. That, it's kind of changes every year. It's hard to, you know.
So didn't we have a contract, it was an open-ended contract? On the assessing, so we went not with the county,
Right.
and I didn't know if they had a built-in increase, or I wouldn't have thought we left it open-ended.
I think you just pay her hourly is what
Yeah,
you,
I haven't found a contract for them, but I've been looking for one to find out what their duties are for us. I know that they're assessors but I don't know, I'd like to find a contract.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I'll look and see if I still have it at home. When we redid the office, I got rid of a lot of stuff. But they would have a copy of it.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid asking.
Yeah, I get that.
'Cause
Yeah.
we should have one in our office, so,
Yes. Let me see.
and this is through the county, is that what you're saying?
no.
No,
We used to go through the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
but we had a proposal, and I would have thought that it was not open-ended. They may have had some fixed increase like the fire contract does.
Okay, okay.
But I just don't recall. I thought we had a fixed rate, and
Yeah, that would be interesting to see what that is.
That's what I thought.
Okay, then on
we
to.
need to look for that contract. You'll
Yes.
look there, you'll look, I'll check
will
my
look,
records.
yeah.
Do we know has it been 3 years, 4 years?
I
Was it
believe-
before you started?
I believe it happened right before I started the first time, I think.
Way back then?
I believe so.
why is our legal fees double what we projected?
Yeah.
As our budget?
That's civil attorney, and that's based on how much time that they are called or asked for professional information.
Maybe we need to look at that. That's a big increase.
Yeah. So it's how much time they're spending with you for civil information.
What's civil information?
It means, council activity.
This is a rupee, right?
Yeah, but that's also all of our, none, that's Brian's Bend, that's road projects.
Those
And
road
anything where the engineer or the planner calls them in as well. So the question is, and this is one of the things that's always been confusing in this, because this is the cost, and this is why we always want to know what gets reimbursed. So if they're doing something that's reimbursable, same thing on the planner.
Well, anything that has to do with a road project should be charged to the road fund.
Yeah.
And the bills, when you get the bill, it should identify it and say that it's part of a road project. And so then the legal fees go to the road fund, because then we're issuing debt and paying for it and things like that. These are not road issues. These are, and all I've done is taken what you've spent so far this year and doubled it, because I don't know. So my projection is just
Right.
I'm just taking what you spent so
You're
far.
taking run rate times
Yep,
6.
yep, exactly. So,
So if it's not that, then what is it? What are we?
what do you
I
mean?
mean, when he comes here, if he goes to Barnum, then that would be charged to us, right?
Right,
And if he comes to a meeting here,
that's you,
that's us.
yeah.
I know, but,
Unless it's road
If it's
project.
a road
yeah.
project,
Then
then we
it's-
would charge it to the road project.
no, but we budget for him to be here for some of that stuff, so this is like double what we planned.
Yes, so that's way
So
too
the burn
much.
rate is higher because we're
We're using them more.
using way more than
Right.
we're planning to, and I don't understand why.
Mr. Mayor?
Do you
Councilmember
know
Rainville.
why?
Well, some of that is also the fire department, because when we did our budget when we did the 2021 budget, we didn't know the fire department came in after we did our budget. Ramsey came in after we did our budget, and so all of the fees associated with establishing our own fire department are in there, and that was considerable. So,
Wasn't that in 2020 though? Not in 21?
No, it's continued. We
It is?
had
Okay.
legislative,
yeah.
we had a lot of meetings this year.
Okay,
Well, we have, the invoices are sent out to council every month, and, the line items state what he's being called about and who's calling,
So we need to look at that carefully,
Yeah,
because
then you
this
know
is way
who's-
over what we projected. So
you know what the fees are coming from then.
I have a question. This isn't about this. But if we have this happened with Mary. If we have a question and we want to contact the attorney about it, Mary contacted us because she said we needed to okay her calling him. Is that true? I mean, can we, as individuals, call the attorney about a question we have, or should it be something that the whole council agrees to before someone calls? Because I was wondering that with Mary.
Typically, how it works is the council would agree that they want the attorney's
to review
input.
something.
And so the staff, like myself, would contact the attorney and then provide all of the information to the whole council.
So we don't go off on, that's why I was wondering, because of your email you sent out. So we don't contact him unless it's agreed upon.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
The exception to that would be is if council has directed a council member to take care of Plan B. And so anything associated with Plan B, that council member has been given the authority to contact the attorney in regards to that. Such as with the fire department, when Dan and Councilmember Bryan and the mayor were assigned the responsibility of working with everybody associated with getting the fire department done, that gave them the ability to make those calls, and that hasn't been taken back at this point, so.
But are they responsible to bring back that information to us, even if we've given them that permission?
That has never been a task that's been assigned to anybody. No. Yeah.
Just asking.
Yeah. And just off topic here, the questions I'd had on the assessor contract went back to October of 17, okay? And I don't know if 17s are still on the website, but you would have hard copies of those meeting minutes, or the agenda. and
So
all
what
that.
was the
So
question you said?
That was on the assessor when we were looking to go with,
October 17 on the assessor, she said.
yeah.
Okay, so, the budget for the legal, it's basically going up by 10%, and we can take a look at that and see if maybe some of those charges should have been, put out into the contracts or whatever, but anyway, that's, it's just a projection, but you can see in 2019, it was 20,500, then it shot up to 33, and I'm sure that was because of the fire. So taking that into consideration, maybe I'll reduce that by $5,000 down to 35 again. Knowing that you're not going to be talking about the fire department anymore, I can reduce that.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rainville.
And that also, so like, I think you had mentioned, is anytime Shane calls them on something, or Liz calls them on something. So that's in there too.
And we have to pay that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, we get the itemized bill. I'll
yeah,
just
yeah,
take a mental note to look it over, as that feels like a lot.
yeah.
And he also had an increase in his wage, the hourly rate too, so.
So then down to governmental buildings, the largest increase here is just basically when like I said, I was transferring like $6,000 from administrative down to general government buildings, and that is for the newsletter and printing and things like that. So that's the largest increase here. Also the maintenance, let's see, the maintenance contracts, what was that about? Let me go back up to the explanation. Let's see. It was the newsletter, increase insurance. The insurance costs are going up about $2,900. And then I was increasing the dues and memberships and training in the general government. That's where all the public works training and things happen. And so that's where it's being charged, and it's not being charged to the public works area. And I believe, no, that didn't go down. So that training was transferred up to general governments.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
to Ms. Yeager, so
Yes.
you just said insurance is going up.
Yes.
What insurance? Because we just talked
That's
about health
we're-
insurance going down, so I just want to clarify.
This is your property and general property maintenance?
General liability,
Yeah.
okay, all right,
And then
just
also your
one-
workers' comp is
work
going
comp,
up
all right.
by $2,400 actually, workers' comp.
Okay.
And what was the other?
The workers' comp, why? Is that,
Must be statewide.
It's based on, yeah, what the projections, what they're giving us as far as what the next year's premium is.
one of the things that's starting to impact cities is workers' comp rates are going up because the presumption on PTSD on public
Oh.
safety,
Sure.
and now the presumption of cancer on firefighters.
Really?
And what they're doing is the workers' comp was never meant to be long-term.
Right.
You got injured, you got repaired, and you got back to work.
Right,
And unfortunately, PTSD can be the rest of your life.
Sure.
It could be something that wasn't necessarily just what you did at work, but it was triggered by what you continue to do at work. And now with the cancer presumption, it's the same thing. There's no end game. And so the state legislature is trying to, there are those in the state legislature that are trying to get that out from the workers' comp. But the insurance agents love it because they don't have to pay it, and it goes on the work comp, and a lot of cities are going to struggle tremendously with the work comp increases.
Okay.
Will ours be affected by recent events? Will that also affect us, or that just?
No, I think the premiums are going up because we've already got the projection for the next year, and that's why we've increased the budget, is the premiums are increasing through the League of Minnesota Cities. So, and we're just showing planning and zoning maybe having a $400 increase over last year. Let's see. Gotta go to engineering. Our engineering costs tend to be rising. So historically, they were 42, 47. I'm projecting 40,000 this year. And we budget 35, so I would like to budget 40,900 in there to cover engineering fees for the general fund. And this does not include road improvement stuff, because the engineering fees are charged to the road improvement funds for road improvement. This is all the other engineering costs that whatever you have Shane working on. Then, of course, the sheriff, and I'll reduce that down to the new $314,000 instead of the $373. Lori, you can send me that information.
Yep.
So that'll make a big change here. And we already talked about fire, so building inspections, I'm just projecting that they're gonna be spending more time out here, so an increase of $2,000. And you can see it dropped down from 126 down to 102. This year I'm projecting 94. And just based on what you're talking about, more construction, I'm thinking it might be going up a little bit in next year.
So how much of that, go ahead, Councilman Rainville.
So we're budgeting $100,000, but that's a pass-through fee, so one of the things have always asked for is a breakdown by consultant, so that this is what you're billing us, but this is what the residents are paying, and this is what we are paying. So this $100,000 next year, what percentage of that is actually city responsibility versus the MinSpec? Because they get the majority of what's charged to the resident as far as the building permit and all the inspections and all that, so.
That's what I was wondering.
So you get about, in building permit fees and charges and things like that, you get about $91,550. So let's say back in 2020, you received $100,756. You generally speaking you get money to cover your building inspector almost completely.
Okay.
So that's pretty much a wash.
Well, I think that's the point we're trying to figure out, because it looks like a big line item, but, if we look on revenues, licenses and permits,
Yeah,
you're projecting 105,000
right,
and a cost of
But it's still.
94.
It's still an expense.
right,
There's a revenue
Right.
stream and expense stream. This
Right.
is still the expense.
Right.
So we have
Right.
it listed as an expense. There's just a revenue to offset it.
Yeah,
yep.
and Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainville.
and I don't disagree with that, it would just be able to be nice to have a sheet that tells us, these are the revenues, these are expenses, this is what it's truly costing the city.
Well, there
One
is-
sheet
Well,
that tells us that for the different contractors, because when people look at, like, the claims that are online, they see it, $15,000 bill or check being cut to a consultant, and they don't understand what's behind that and what we're reimbursed, and, so it'd just be nice to have that.
I think that's pretty much your only consultant, except for maybe your planner that you get some planning fees from, yeah, is your inspector and your planner.
Well, yeah, but the attorney and the engineer,
Well, the engineer doesn't get any reimbursement through the general fund, that's all levy, and the attorney is all levy in the general fund. The attorney and the engineer would be charged to a project in a different fund if they were working on those projects.
and that's it, if they are working on a project.
Right.
So if we write them a check for $13,000,
Right.
of that 13,000, what part of that is a project?
Wow.
And what part of that is city responsibility?
That's a lot to ask Lori to do. Because this Lori's not. It would cost you too much money for me to do that. That's a lot. So, that's pretty detailed, especially on a per invoice basis. Let's see, where were we? Building inspection, okay, public works. Let's see, basically salary increase there, COLA and market increase possible. Street maintenance seems to be going up, so if we look down at the, I'm on page 6, if we go down to page, let's see, 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, the maintenance and contract services seem to be rising there, especially with just more happening around the city, and same with your materials and supplies.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I bumped the budget up there from 62,000 to 84,000. And that's the large increase.
So in this case, it actually is maintenance and contract services in that category?
Let's see, it's probably not just that, there's other things that are in there. Let's see, let me look. Oops, Public Works. Generally speaking, it's actually, rental of equipment, it's repair and maintenance for the streets and signs and culverts, and, let's see what else, gravel is in there, and your rock and stuff like that, probably your salt. So there's quite a bit in there.
So that is more.
Oh, you know
maintenance.
what, I was including supplies, I'm sorry. It's maintenance and equipment rental and your gravel.
I just, we went from 125 to 131. We increased it 40,000 last year, and it looks like we'll come up, $10,000, $12,000 less than that projected. I mean, I would guess, depending on how much salt and sand is yet to be purchased,
Right,
how much gravel we're gonna get to put down.
right.
It just seems from 2019 to 2022, we've gone up $50,000. I just didn't know it.
So
If the category is the same or we're adding things to it.
yeah, it does vary. So in 2018, you spent on contractual and rock and stuff on about $100,000. In 2019, you spent 150. And then in 2020, you spent 108. And then in 2021, I'm projecting you're gonna spend 120. So it pretty much does vary every year. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm projecting 155 in 2021. So I was actually looking at 17, 18, 19, and 20. I've got a lot of history here. So 17 is when you spent 98. 18 is when you spent 150, 19 is when you spent 110, 20 you spent 120. I'm projecting you're gonna spend 155 in 21, and we're budgeting 162, just to cover. Because you don't want to come up short. We do have contingency, we have about $15,000 of contingency, but if you need repairs and street improvements and stuff, you want to have the funds available there. Your budget for this really did not change much. It only went up $4,500. What really went up was supplies.
Yeah, I'm just saying between 20 and 21, though, it went up $40,000. This year it's only going up 45.
Right.
So we went up $40,000 and it looks like, well, that was probably $10,000-$12,000 more than we're projecting for this year.
Right, and it, like I say, it varies every year, and so it is not a constant figure, you know. And I just think you're more comfortable being prepared for whatever arises. Farmers market, we did include an additional $1,000 for a stipend for some people.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville?
to Ms. Yeager, can you tell me what category the revenues that the farmer's market brings in goes into? And is that just general intergovernmental revenue, or where does that,
No, it's not an intergovernmental.
okay, where does that go into? Because I believe
I think it's in your permits. There's a farmer's permit there,
okay,
and you get about, it varies.
I think it,
About $1,000. I budgeted $1,200 basically for the farmer's market. It was only $1,000 in 2021, but in 2020 it was $1,500. So, maybe they had more people in 2020 than they did in 21. I don't know.
and where, and tell me where that is reflected.
It's in the permits. It's buried in your permit and license.
Okay.
You have several categories. It's not on
Okay,
yours.
all right, okay,
I have it in
all
the
right, okay,
detail.
that's right, okay.
Yeah, it's in your permit revenue,
Okay,
and it's not
all right,
detailed out. It's $1,200.
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Because I think,
Councilmember Greenberg?
Mary, is that, what is a permit cost? What does a permit cost for a year at the market?
off the top of my head, Councilmember Greenberg, I believe it's $110 for the yearly, and then there's 6 months, and then there's individual dates. But I believe we've deposited just under $1,000 in fees, if I'm not mistaken, striking.
Yeah, it's about $1,000
Okay.
this year. Yep.
And we're still getting more in because new vendors.
So if a vendor wanted to, they could show up just once, pay a permit fee for one day.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And
Okay.
that information's on the website under the farmer's market, rules and regulations, I think is the, yeah.
What is one day? I know it used to be $10, but I don't know what it is
Yeah,
now.
I want to say it hasn't been, they haven't raised it, so if it was 10, it's probably still 10.
Okay. And then the parks is actually going down a little bit, decreasing some of their budgets there that I didn't think. Now, the Upper Rum River Watershed Management Organization, I don't know, is anyone on that council, and do you know
That's right
what
over
the
there,
budget
that
is?
young man.
Because I don't know what the budget is.
Oh,
And while you're looking that up, I left the contingency in there, $15,000. That's basically, if something happens during the year and we need an extra little extra budget, we have it there. It's just a contingency so that you have it available. And then also the transfers out, they include the 72,000.
Lori, can we just add one more question on the park area there?
Oh,
This is one of those things, because we don't have a list of what makes up these categories.
sure,
We went from maintenance and contract services again. 19, we were 1,900, 20, we were 1,500. This year, we're projecting 454 on a
Right.
$4,300 budget.
right.
So we're reducing it, but we're still doubling any previous year. What makes that up, and why did we
Okay.
jump from 15 to 43? So it looks like it's going down by 14%, but it's 10 times what we projected for cost.
Right. Well, and it might be that they haven't incurred all their costs yet because this is only through June. And so park stuff doesn't happen until later, usually. So this projection might be, very low.
Yeah, actually, I mean, we'll start winding down, they shut the parks down by October, so.
Right. This is rental of equipment, that's what the 454. Otherwise, they normally have some kind of repair and maintenance, and they haven't had any this year. So, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to have any. So, you want to have a budget there for repair and maintenance if you need repair and maintenance. But right now, there hasn't been any.
Yeah, I'm just saying over the past, I didn't look through my previous years here, but the past 2 years,
Right,
we've, what we're budgeting for next year is twice what we've ever done in another year. So
right. So I'm looking at 2017. 2017 was $3,700. So you have been up there at $3,700. In 2017, you were. In 2018, you weren't. 19, you weren't. 2020, you weren't. And I don't know about 21. So far, they haven't had any costs, but, could they? Yeah, they could have a $2,500 maintenance or repair job that we're not aware of. And so that budget is there just for those types of expenditures that could occur. And I basically got rid of the gravel because that's being paid for out of Public Works. That's not being paid for out of here. And it was a $600 budget, so we just eliminated that.
Our 2021 budget is $9,767.97.
Right, right, I'm looking for 22. And I don't know that you guys ever even done the 22 yet, but,
what's that now?
It's usually April. It's always April.
What are you talking about?
the Upper Rum River Watershed Management.
Oh, 10,000 seems reasonable,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I thought too, It's been 10,000 in the past, and it's only $230 increase.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Blake.
what do we get for that money?
That's a loaded question.
Oh, sorry.
The people that live along the Rum, it's the watershed that feeds the Rum.
Okay.
And so all the cities that are along the Rum, that have tributaries and creeks that run into the Rum, the intention is to keep the water clean, bank erosion, clean lakes.
Okay.
So what they do is they'll study, there's a group, the acronym is Bowser. They will do studies on water quality and they'll give you Lake George is X% worse in water quality than previous years, which might mean the clarity was 10 feet, now it's 9 feet, 9 inches. It's an odd number, but they basically, they came here a couple of years ago and said, we have money to spend, give us some projects. And that's why we've been fighting to
Check
lower
Twin
this.
Lakes out?
There's not a whole lot. We've got probably the cleanest lake around the Twin Lake. And again, they check our lakes, but it's also the Ford Brook and anything that's feeding
Okay.
down. And it's, a lot of the projects you'll see will be erosion control. They'll be paying people along, Oak Grove to put in boulders and trees to keep the water clean from what might be bank erosion.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember
I'm
Greenberg.
gonna quickly give you a synopsis.
Are you gonna read me something?
Water Management Fund, lake level monitoring, Lake George East Twin Lake, Cooper's Lake, Bernard Lake, lake water quality monitoring, reference wetland hydrology monitoring, biomonitoring, Rum River monitoring, website, annual operations, public education and outreach, Anoka County Water Resource Outreach Collaborative, projects as detailed in the 10-year plan, sub-watershed assessment studies, watershed coordinator gets paid, facilitate technical advisory meetings,
Okay,
a bunch of exciting stuff like that.
okay, let's get going.
Can we opt out?
Oh,
No,
Okay,
It's
let's
been
stick around.
discussed.
can I quick give you a
No.
Joel Greenberg
It's
assessment?
9:30, I'm ready
It'll
to,
be 10,
Yeah,
it'll
it's time
be
to
15
close.
seconds
It's time to
long.
close.
Okay.
Let's go on, let's finish up.
so then, page 12 is a synopsis of
So
your,
back on the page 11, so our projected total expenditures for 2021 is $1,593,000. We budgeted $1,871,000.
right,
Um,
so you're way under budget.
So what does that mean? Because then we're going up to $1,989,000.
Well, it means that maybe there's some things that haven't started yet, some maintenance or something like that. Well, and one thing, Lori didn't fill the full-time position, and so that, there's a savings there. And there's probably some road maintenance and things like that that aren't getting done because you have a person that's laid off, or not laid off, but out. And so you might have some savings this year that were unanticipated and compared to previous years. I do know that there are some things that are coming up that didn't get in here, that were larger expenses that are gonna happen, so that dollar amount will probably go down as the year goes on. But you have to remember, this is just a projection, and it's only based on activity through the end of June. I have no way of projecting, knowing what is gonna happen in the next six months. And so that number is gonna change.
But right now, if it didn't, we're at 59% fund balance.
That is correct.
There you go, you made it.
So if that were the case, we may want to consider some transfers.
Yep,
Or adjust 2022. Right
right.
now, if we spend everything, obviously that'll change with the sheriff's contract here, but the fund balance is stated 881, we'd be at 47% fund balance.
So the next page, page 12, is a synopsis, and it's just a big picture of all the changes in the different categories in the general fund. And again, you can see the law enforcement contract is your biggest adjustment up, and so is your materials and your supplies. And that is based on history. And your legal, but we'll take a look at that and see if we can get that jumped down a little bit. Okay, and then on to the next fund, and that would be recycling, I believe. Page 13. Now, you had talked about doing some kind of a shed or something, and that is really a great opportunity to apply for a grant through the county for that kind of a project. So they have grant funds available for recycling activity, and then the city can apply for assistance in funding something like that. So
That's a good idea.
that was actually Lori's idea.
Good idea, Laurie.
So, other than that, no changes, just a small increase in salaries and benefits. Oh, and some increases in your charges. See, your charges seem to be going up as far as more utilization of recycling. I think during the pandemic, everybody got rid of their junk.
Nothing else to do, clean.
Clean out there. So. And then we go to debt service on page 14.
On the recycling, so the
Okay.
intergovernmental is 32, is that the max we can get at this point? And we
Through
were
the
in
county?
40 We were 49 and 19 and 49
That's,
and 20.
yeah, you got grants back then because you had particular increases in, like you had like some equipment or cameras or something like you bought. And so your amount that you get from the county is higher when you get a grant. So those years you got grants. And in 2021, there's nothing that you're getting a grant for. So you're only going to get the normal allocation.
I'm just saying 2022, we would look for grants for the
Yeah.
tenant shelter.
I'm just hoping that they increase what they're going to give you to 32,000 versus 30. It's possible, you know. I don't know. It could be 31 maybe. But
And the charges for services, I mean, we're projecting, $8,000 more,
right,
2021.
right.
Part of the situation is, now that it's staffed whenever it's opened,
Uh-huh.
or are we seeing things left on the days it's not open?
Occasionally, but not much.
Okay, so, if we're not seeing much there, we should anticipate we're not getting anything anymore that's not paid for. So that really should be, if everything should be paid for now, that should be probably a higher number, but.
I like
Do you
to,
feel that, Lori? Or
Well,
more
we
things
still
paid
get,
for?
we still get dumping in ditches. I mean, the guys are out on a daily basis or weekly basis picking up mattresses and furniture out of ditches that aren't.
Yeah,
paid for.
I don't disagree that the hauling cost will still be there because we're taking things in for things that are left that somebody didn't pay for in the ditches. But I'm saying that we had a lot of tires, when I would go in there and dump things off, there'd be a lot of things without paid stickers. Of course, with tires, you don't know, but now that Kelly is checking receipts,
Yep.
nothing's being left that isn't paid for.
Unless they leave it outside the doors.
Right. But I'm just saying that now we at least know that, we could take a look at that and say, here's our typical activity. If all that's being paid for, we would know.
well, I did increase it by 11%, almost 12%. I like to be more conservative on the revenue side.
Yep.
And so that's why I only went up, 11%. 2019, it was 21,000. 2020, you can see it was only 14. My projection for 21 is just that, it's a projection. It could be much less than that, or it could be more.
2020, we were shut down
So-
quite.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville?
looking at our contract for recycling that we signed for the 21 contract, we were supposed to be getting funding of $49,968.
That's if you have a grant.
No, that's our,
So I think the issue is we get portion of the money in one year, and sometimes it carries over to the next year that we get the other. So our numbers are always a little confusing with the recycling, I feel like, because we don't always get the amount in the full in 1 year.
My understanding was that you get 30,000 for regular activity, and then you get the other 19 if you apply for the money. That's the only way you get it. Now, that's what Ellen has told me over and over again, and she's the one that manages this, and
Yeah,
so,
let's pull the contract.
yeah, we'll have to pull the
I'll-
contract.
I'll
but-
email it to you.
And we do apply for the grant money. We always try to find a reason or a place to spend it. So
Sure.
if we can get it, we want to be able to get it.
Right, but then your expenditures go up too, so
Right.
it's not, it happens on both sides of the ledger.
And in the hauling, the maintenance, 2019, we were 55, 2020, we were 16, 2021, we were 16, and we budgeted 7,000. So,
So in 2018, it was 6,500, in 2019, it was 9,000, in 2020, it was 5, and I'm only projecting 2,500, and I don't know why it's so low this year.
I think he's looking
I
at
said, I'm looking at maintenance.
maintenance.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at disposal.
Yeah.
No, maintenance was 55, 17, 16, and we budgeted 7,000. I just wanted, what are we planning there? 'Cause again, we try and use grants to fix up the building. And we look for a grant to have the shelter.
So back in 2018, you actually spent $15,000 on maintenance, and I don't know, you know, I don't know what it was that you did. And
We put on an addition,
Put the addition on, yeah.
was that in 2017
yeah.
or 2018? And then, yeah, so you spend usually 5 to, yeah, we can definitely reduce that down to a smaller number. I would be comfortable going down to 3,000 for contractual, and then rental of equipment. You spend about $1,000 a year, and that's included in there. So I can go from
And that's our porta potty.
7,000 to 4,000. How's that?
And then I have a question on, so salary and benefits. So that includes Eric and Joe and our part-timer, right?
I don't know that it has a part-timer in there, but, oh yeah, it does.
Well, yeah,
Yep,
but
it
that
does.
one
Yep,
just-
it does.
All right, okay.
Yep. Okay. And you know, frankly, we would probably do this budget in 2 nights and not just one, because this is a lot for one night.
Yes, it is.
So, normally we'd like get through the general fund one night, and then we'd go and get through all the other funds a second night. But since we're here and we're almost done, I think I'd like to just push on and because we've really covered the capital project funds pretty detailed. So really, the only other thing is debt service, and you can see there, the revenues are going down, the tax levy's going down. The principal and interest aren't really going down, but that's because you have enough fund balance to pay for the principal and interest in those debt service funds, so. And I will adjust these park improvement, budgets and this building improvement budget and the road and bridge one. I don't know if I'm gonna change the 900 unless I hear from Shane and he says, yeah, this is what it should be. But I'll adjust that, and then I will also adjust the equipment one to be what we had discussed earlier. So, I don't think we really need to look at those or review those again. Like I say, now that we're reducing if you look on 18, we're gonna go from 7.62% down to 3.98% for an increase in the tax levy. And you have an opportunity to even decrease it further if you want. I don't recommend it, as you stated, the next year, you're gonna have an increase in your levy. And if you decrease your levy more this year, that increase is gonna even be higher. So, you know, it's great to have a low levy one year, but then if you have double digits the following year, that's no fun.
No.
So, and maybe what you do is, next year, when it's gonna be higher because you have the debt service, we'll use some of that fund balance that you're earning this year to offset some of those increases in costs. And so then you won't have the 9%, maybe we can get it down to 5 or something like that. So there's ways to manipulate the budget, as so to speak, to make it more friendly.
Valuable.
Yes, yes, for taxpayers and everybody involved, so.
So Lori, just a quick question here. So on the capital plan we had the park capital, we had dedication fees. And on the budget, we have park development fees?
Right, it's the same thing. It's
Okay,
a
so the
different-
one was 5,000, this one's 30,000. So
Yeah,
you did
this
see
is-
it on this one.
This is more accurate than the CIP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Greenberg.
Lori, what's left in the park budget for this year?
Currently, there is 218,000 at the end of 2020, and I think this year you're gonna be up to 255,000 after you get your park development fees this year.
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville?
to Councilmember Greenberg's question, does that 255 include our CDs for the park?
That's where that money is.
That's
Yeah.
it, it's all, it's the
So
CDs.
all of your money is all invested in several different CDs.
Okay, that's what
And not only CDs, but also money market funds.
Right.
Through the 4M fund, and that's where all the investments are.
So I just want to clarify that because it's not $255,000 sitting there, we can write a check on it. Yeah. So, yes and no, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's a CD. Yeah.
You knew I just wanted to take that money and burn it.
Takes a
I
little
mean,
bit more than just writing
burn
a
it on
check.
projects, Linda.
Oh, yes, I
We had
certainly
a-
expected that.
Park committee that wanted that, they saw that funds and they
Yeah.
said, we can spend that.
We
We
can
said,
spend that right now, yeah.
"Oh." So on the building improvement.
So
on
why
page
can't they
50,
spend it if it's park funds?
Well, it's gotta be a
Yeah.
capital,
An improvement for the park?
Yeah,
yeah.
So you're building, why are we struggling to figure out how we're gonna pay for fixing these buildings up and stuff if we have this money?
Well, we shouldn't be struggling. We're struggling in that we don't have a plan to what we want to do. There's monies to do work. Some of the park and rec was, they saw that dollar amount and they thought it was just carte blanche.
And they didn't understand it was only
Yeah.
capital as well.
Yeah.
The other thing that when you take those funds, it's a park and trail fee. And the original intention was to build up the funds to the point where we could put in trails for future
Ah,
generations.
amen.
And that's very expensive. And if you use it all on smaller things, you'll never get that fund built up for the bigger trails. And once you develop, it gets really hard to put in trails, because nobody wants it in their backyard anymore.
you're right.
But on page 15, the building improvement, revenues, we have miscellaneous, and transfers in.
There was some contributions, donations back.
So in 2020, we got some donations.
Yeah.
We transferred in 125,
Right,
and then we transferred in this year, we're projecting 35
Yep.
per budget.
yep.
And so our fund balance, if we do that, looks to be projected about 111,000.
Yep. So, Mr. Mayor and council members, I'd like to implement those changes and get this back out to you. Let's see, what is today? By the end of this week for sure. And then I don't know if we want to meet again before I leave for Germany or when I get back, because I will be back in September and we can meet. So the council meeting where you will adopt a preliminary levy and budget is September 14th. And there is a week before that, September 7th, is a Tuesday that we could meet to rehash this after you've had a month and whatever to look at it, and to make sure that you're happy with where the levy is at, and that you want to move forward with doing a preliminary levy. I recommend that we at least meet one more time at some point, either September 7th, or if you're available, I am available August 2nd, or even August 3rd,
When do you go to Germany?
August 4th. So August 3rd wouldn't be really great, but,
August 3rd is National Night Out, so,
oh, it is, okay,
or night to night.
okay. And I can do a Zoom meeting from Germany.
Lori Stryker, you're gone the 5th through the 12th?
I'm gone the 4th through the 12th
4th through the 12th?
and the 19th of August. I don't think I can do a Zoom meeting because I don't know if they have service.
Right, and I have internet, my son has internet, so,
So you won't be here for the August council?
Nope, I'll be out of the country as well.
September 7th,
Yeah.
September 7th?
looks good for me.
Yeah, I think that's early enough. I mean, that'll give me enough time to make any last minute changes and,
What time we wanna do it? 6 or 7?
yeah, 6 o'clock. It shouldn't take long since we've already hashed out quite a bit, as long as I can get all the changes in there. And if you're generally speaking okay with the 3.98%, it might even be a little less because I'm gonna make a few other adjustments for the expenditures. So it for sure will be under 4. And then, of course, like I say, we can talk about decreasing it more if you'd like, or leaving it there so that in the future year, we won't have such a high impact of a levy.
Lori, when did you think you could get us a updated,
I can get you one by this Friday, so you'll
give
have,
us a chance to
yep,
put it in our pillow and dream?
yes.
Okay, I have on
Mr.
my calendar August 31st budget work session. What is
Yeah,
that?
that's right, we have one
But I have
scheduled.
to-
And I had it as a possible budget work session, but I don't fly in until that night.
Okay, so we can.
So can we delete
Can you
that
come
date?
like
Yes,
straight here?
Yeah, to move it to the 7th.
Right,
Sorry, I didn't I
Can you
didn't
come
know
straight
that.
here?
Yeah, I can come right here.
No, I don't think you want to.
No,
okay, take that one out. And, Mr. Mayor,
On Rainville?
to Ms. Yeager, will we also have the updated CIP? Because that's gonna affect the budget too, as far as what we're putting in.
right, but yes, but I will already have the CIP numbers in the budget.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And so when do I need to publish? Because I need to do a public
Yeah.
hearing notice.
2 weeks, 10 days
Oh,
before.
Yeah, that won't work then.
uh-oh, yeah.
For what?
Won't work.
Maybe we should meet before she leaves.
Yep,
So the 7th is off?
yeah.
No, because she won't be able to have it public.
Do I have to do a public hearing notice for the preliminary? I don't think I do. I think it's for the adoption of the
When you
budget.
adopt it,
Yeah, then I do the
correct.
Just
public
the
hearing.
adoption, Okay.
I don't do the public hearing for the preliminary.
And we can
But-
take care of that in the office, whatever we
Okay.
need the notice for, we'll take care of that. You don't have to take care of that.
Okay, but,
You would just show up for the meeting.
right, but I mean, when do you print it? I'm just thinking if we have a meeting on the 7th and your meeting is on the 14th,
Yep.
when do you have to
So
have
we
it?
would go back 2 weeks
Oh, you're kidding.
so that we have the full
The
10
31st?
days.
No, that's not gonna work then.
So by,
Well, so typically, and we have to have it into the county by the end of September.
Yep, by the end of September.
So.
I was
could-
trying to
could-
get it,
Could we have so what's the public hearing we have to have?
it's a preliminary, you have to adopt a resolution. It's not a public hearing.
Is
This
this
was-
new?
No, you just have to adopt the resolution every year for your preliminary levy or budget.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville?
does what is required to be posted in the paper, does that have to have a dollar number in it? Or is it just notice of the meeting?
I think the preliminary levy is just notice of the meeting, but the one in December is the public
Correct.
hearing.
yeah.
So
And that has to
staff
have
could
the
put
dollar
the
amount.
public, if it's found we need it for the September, they can do it ahead of time. The fact that we don't have numbers at that time isn't
Okay,
relevant. So
okay.
If it works that way.
All right,
So the question would be is we just have, that's why I want to get this so we can identify any questions so that the final meeting on the 7th, we've got answers.
yeah,
Because we don't want to be doing this again on the 7th.
no,
Right.
no,
The 7th of,
September.
oh, can you have estimates for all those capital improvement ideas that we listed up.
Yeah, we'll have to be close anyway. I'm hoping to have out all that information by this Friday. So,
So the 7th is back on?
except for, yeah, the 7th is back on, and I'll let you know if it doesn't work for some reason, but I think it'll be fine. I just want to make sure all our notices are, done at an appropriate time. So. Okay. Are we good?
Yes. Can we turn these off now and have the other
No, we
meeting?
have to announce our closed meeting.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready to close this meeting?
Yeah, so you'll take a look then at page 17 after our capital talks and straighten that all out.
Yep. Yep.
All right, we can close the budget work session, capital improvement work session, and we will open a closed meeting.